Chapter 1084. Your Honor. After a short conversation with Fong Buja, Phantom Dawn narrowed his eyes and told the judge weakly, I have changed my mind. I will not plead guilty and agree to hand over the defense to Fong Bujua. Okay. The judge nodded and then turned to Brother Jew. Defense lawyer, you can start any time. Fong Bujua did not stand on ceremony and cut to the chase. Your Honor, I wish to call a witness. Defense lawyer, this court did not receive the request for witnesses and evidence that you submitted before the trial, the judge said. If the witness that you wish to call is not present in court, then there is nothing we can do. That is fine, Brother Jew said. I know. All the witnesses that I wish to call are present. Is that so? The judge's tone changed slightly. Then, please. Fong Bujua chuckled and turned around to look at the door that he had kicked open. The first witness that I wish to call is, when the first half of his sentence left his lips, a black shadow had already appeared at the door. That black shadow was indeed a real black shadow. The man looked just like those murderers who were about to fall into Detective Conan's hands, but had not been exposed. His whole body was like a shadow, and only his pair of eyes shone with an eerie blue color. There were layers of strange wrinkles on the surface of his body, and one could see something that looked like blood flowing through the wrinkles. It was as if his blood vessels grew out of his body and were transparent. All dawn. When the man appeared, Fong Bujua called out his name. Instantly, there was a flurry of whispers in the courtroom and the judge's stand. However, this was not enough for the judge to call for silence. Humph! Defense lawyer. Biff smirked coldly. He looked at Brother Jew and said, Your first witness is a fugitive? That's right. Fong Bujua replied confidently. Defense lawyer, I have to remind you. 2 seconds later, the judge spoke. After all Dawn's testimony, the bailiff will not allow him to leave the courtroom. He paused. In addition, given his identity, the credibility of his testimony will also be affected. It's all right, Fong Bujua said. I've known about this for a long time. The judge pondered for a moment. Then, please begin the questioning of the witness. While they were talking, Aldan walked all the way to the witness stand and stood there silently. There was no Bible on the witness stand in the court of truth, and they did not ask the witnesses to take any oath because this was the court of truth. The court of truth was a combination of religion and law. It was an extreme belief. Please tell me your name. Fong Bujua did not waste any time. He strode to the witness stand and asked the question directly from his lips. Aldan answered. He had the voice of a middle-aged man, but there was nothing special about him. What is your identity? Fong Bujua asked, even though he already knew the answer. Currently, I am a fugitive, Aldan answered. Once, I was a wanderer in the main universe. Do you know the defendant? Fong Bujua asked. I do. Aldan's answer was also concise. He is Phantom Dawn. Have you met each other before? Fong Bujua asked. Yes, Aldan said. Please describe the situation at the time, Fong Bujua said. Aldan nodded slightly. In the year 493, I was collecting the locals' fears on Planet Syrup. At a village, I ran into Phantom Dawn. He asked me some questions about the village, and then we parted ways. Objection. At this point, Biff raised his first and last objection. The questions raised by the defense lawyer have nothing to do with the case. Sustained, the judge said, Your Honor. Fong Bujua opened his arms. My question was to prove that Phantom Dawn is not the crazy, cold-blooded serial killer who focuses on hunting down unique data as described by the prosecutor. He raised his arm to point at Aldan. If that's the case, then when Aldan met him back then, he would have been murdered. Humph! Biff scoffed. Perhaps he was not that powerful at the time. Do you have any proof for that? Fong Bujua asked. Biff raised his head and replied smugly. That is merely a logical speculation. Oh! Fong Bujua nodded with a smile. In other words, without any evidence and with one's own bias, one can deduce the process and motive from the result and then fabricate some content that fits the above criteria and pass it off as the truth. He scratched his chin and said thoughtfully, Is it really okay to have someone like that as the prosecutor? You. Biff's face was dark from Brother Jew's words. What you said earlier, is not a logical speculation. Huh. Fong Bujua laughed drily and tossed the man a condescending look. Of course not. He paused for a second before adding, Mr. Prosecutor, do you even know what speculation is? What is a proof? Then, why don't you tell me what the difference is? Biff asked Brother Jew with a face filled with dissatisfaction. His question was simply seeking his own death. If one had to make an analogy, Biff's action was like he was trying to resist when he was being raped by logic. The next second, Fong Bujue replied arrogantly, Fine, since you have asked so shamelessly, then I will answer you with all my heart. Even though I know the man is using idioms, how come I don't feel that it is out of place? Phantom Dawn, who was watching from the side, thought to himself, is this the power of a novelist? Suddenly, I have the urge to read his book. Fong Bujue, on the other hand, did not know what Phantom Dawn was thinking. At that moment, Brother Jew was immersed in the pleasure of torturing his opponent on a mental level. He walked quickly to stand before Biff and announced confidently, Mr. Prosecutor, in the testimony earlier, the witness has stated very clearly that he met Phantom Dawn in year 493 and the long accusation that you have. At this point, he reached out to poke at the stack of documents on the man's table. Also states clearly at the beginning that Phantom Dawn was involved in the case between year 492 and year 501. Once that was said, the whole courtroom was enlightened. 95% of the people thought, yes, that was mentioned at the beginning of the accusation. In other words, when Phantom Dawn met All Dawn, he had already started to hunt for the uniqueness. The other 5% thought, this Fong Bujue has been eavesdropping since Biff started his case. He purposely waited until Phantom Dawn was about to confess before he barged in to mess things up. Of course, these thoughts were within Fong Bujue's expectations, so he did not plan to care about them. At that moment, Brother Jew was focused on dealing with the burr before him. Mr. Prosecutor, Fong Bujue looked directly into Biff's eyes and continued in a threatening tone. Let me ask you, a person who, in year 492, he suddenly picked up the accusation and pointed at the words on the paper, would not hesitate to launch such a cruel attack on a government official. He paused for half a second and widened his eyes. He looked at Biff like a normal person looking at an idiot. Would give up on attacking All Dawn in year 493 because he admitted that he was not that capable. Regarding this question, Biff had no answer. He could only stare. That is impossible. Fong Bujue continued. The real reason why Phantom Dawn did not attack All Dawn, as I said earlier, it is because the description of him in the accusation is wrong. Then, let us return to the question that you have asked me, and the answer will be clear. Fong Bujue said as he raised his hand to pat his chest lightly. Based on the testimony provided by the witnesses, I came up with a logical conclusion to prove my point of view, and that is what we call an argument. He put down his hands and placed them on the table. He leaned forward and grinned wickedly at Biff. You, on 2 occasions, have come up with a conclusion that is contrary to common sense through subjective assumptions and imagination, and you claim that it is a logical conclusion. To put it nicely, it is a wrong conclusion, but to put it bluntly, it is the nonsense of an idiot. Damn it. Biff was so angry that his blood vessels were about to explode. He turned to the judge. Your Honor. Sigh, you'd better think carefully before you speak. Fong Bujue immediately interrupted him. This thing about you, if it is not the nonsense of an idiot, then it is the fabrication of facts by a normal person, right? Biff thought about it, and seemed to have decided to admit that he was an idiot. However, Fong Bujue did not even want to give him this opportunity. Everyone has seen it. This is the so-called invincible prosecutor. Brother Jew shrugged and turned to the courtroom. He laughed. According to his self-justifying accusation. He tilted his head and revealed a despicable expression. Invincible or whatever. I could do it too. After he finished speaking, the whole courtroom was in an uproar, followed by a clamor. Bang, bang, bang. Silence. A few seconds later, the judge had no choice but to knock on the gavel. When the courtroom returned to silence, the judge said to Brother Jew, Defense lawyer, this is not your personal talk show or the venue of your speech. He turned to look at the prosecutor who was not far away. and then sighed and said to Brother Jew, "You have already proved your point, so you should stop." The judge's mind was still very clear. After he said that, he turned to the jury and said, "Dear jurors, please do not accept the reasonable speculation that the prosecutor just said." Then he turned to Brother Jew again. "Defense lawyer, no matter what, the prosecutor's objection is still valid. Next, the questions you ask the witness must be related to the case, or else, please stop the questioning." In that case, Fong Bujue appeared to be very calm. After all, his real goal, which was to defeat the prosecutor, had been achieved. Now it was time to move on to the next step. "Please allow me," he continued, "to call the second witness." Chapter 1085. The second witness Fong Bujue invited into the courtroom was a giant rabbit about the size of a kangaroo, or rather, a bunny alien. He had a mustache and a pair of glasses on the bridge of his nose. He was wearing a white shirt, a black vest, and a bow tie at the collar. But he didn't wear pants. Of course, this anthropomorphic rabbit didn't need to wear pants because the lower half of its body was still bunny. Rabbit. When the judge saw the second witness, he couldn't help but use a vicious tone to call out his name. Without a doubt, the judge clearly remembered how Rabbit and his cousin Bugs Bunny threw feces at him when they were making a scene in court. I think it's necessary for me to explain. Rabbit feces are usually round and the size of a grape. Based on this, you can imagine the size of the feces of the two bunny aliens and the judge who was attacked by feces of this size. What state was he in at the time? Huh? Your Honor, long time no see. Rabbit obviously didn't have a pleasant expression on his face. He immediately greeted the judge with a provocative sneer. "Defense lawyer, I have to remind you." When Rabbit was on the witness stand, the judge looked at Fong Bujue and said in a more serious tone, "The second witness you want to question, other than being a wanted criminal, he has a serious record of contempt of the court." Before he finished, Brother Jew interrupted him. I know. I don't want him to leave after the questioning, right?" He smiled. No problem." As he spoke, he gestured in the direction of Aldan. At this moment, Aldan was taken to the side by two police officers and handcuffed. "Just like Aldan, after I'm done with the questioning, you can arrest him." Fong Bujue continued. "This kid." At this moment, a trace of uneasiness flashed through the judge's heart. What is he planning? He couldn't help but think to himself. He can't have convinced Aldan and Rabbit to turn themselves in, right? Uneasiness aside, the trial had to continue. The judge's real body was hidden under the black cloak, so no one could see the change in his expression. Therefore, no matter how doubtful and shaken he was, it couldn't be seen from his face. All right." The judge tried his best to keep his voice steady. "Defense lawyer, please begin the questioning of the second witness." After he finished speaking, Rabbit walked up to the witness stand. At the same time, Fong Bujue stepped forward and asked, "Witness, please state your name and identity." "I'm Labit." Labit raised his short hands to stroke his long ears and stroked his mustache. "I used to be a juror here, but now I'm a wanted criminal." "Oh." Fong Bujue raised his voice and asked, "Can you tell me the specific time you served as a juror here?" "I have been a member of the Court of Truth for as long as it has existed," Rabbit replied, "until 494 of the Divine Calendar." He glared at the judge. "Because my philosophy was different from yours, it led to the so-called contempt of court incident." As soon as these words were spoken, the court burst into an uproar. Bang, bang. The judge angrily struck the gavel twice and said, "Silence." 2 seconds later, before the court returned to silence, Fong Bujue asked the next question. "Do you know the defendant?" "I do." Labit turned to look at the defendant's stand. "Who doesn't know Phantom Dawn?" Brother Jew nodded. After 2 seconds, he asked, "You heard the case statement that Prosecutor Biff gave not long ago, right?" "I did," Labit replied. Fong Bujue asked, "If I ask you to make a judgment from the perspective of a juror, do you think Phantom Dawn is guilty?" Defense lawyer. This time, it was not the prosecutor who stopped Brother Jew with the word objection, but the judge himself. "The question you raised is an insult to the 12 current jurors," the judge warned sternly. "Your Honor." Fong Bujue placed his hands behind his back and turned to answer. No matter what Labit's current position is, his identity as a former juror will not change. Furthermore, he is a very experienced and talented juror. As he spoke, Brother Jew walked to the judge's stand. In terms of experience, I'm afraid the 12 present here can only catch up to him. After mocking the 12 before him, Fong Bujua turned back to the judge. I believe no one is more qualified than him to answer this question of mine. Hearing that, the judge fell silent, and following the silence was a contemplative silence. The jurors started to whisper among themselves. Basically, their hatred toward Brother Jew had risen by another 300%. Regarding the prosecutor, there was no need to worry about him. Biff's mental state had been crushed. Other than sitting there and spacing out, there was nothing else he could do. Okay, the witness may continue. Moments later, the judge spoke again. But after you answer this question as a former juror, the police will arrest you based on your status as a current wanted criminal. Humph, when faced with an unfavorable situation, you find a way to forcefully stop the questioning. Ravid snorted. That's just like you. His expression and tone were filled with disdain. How dare you? This time, even the judge, who had always maintained a calm attitude, said the same words as the hot-tempered clerk. Bailiff, take him down. As soon as the judge gave the order, a few bailiffs surrounded Labit at lightning speed. It was obvious that they had been prepared for this for a long time. It doesn't matter. Labit was calm. He reached out his two short hands and said, "Cuff me if you want." As the bailiff handcuffed him, he added, "By the way, my answer to that question is guilty." He paused for half a second, looked at the judge with malice, and added, "For now, consider it self-defense. Give him a suspended sentence." When he finished, there was another commotion in the courtroom. Bang, bang, bang. The judge slammed the gavel again and yelled, "Silence! Silence!" After that, he immediately continued. This witness is suspected of sabotaging the trial. All of his testimony shall not be accepted. Then, Fong Bujua said to the judge with a half-smile, "Your Honor, I request to question the third witness." Who was it this time? The judge was obviously annoyed. His attitude was completely different from before. "It's me." The next second, a deep voice came from outside the door. Then, there was a strange creaking sound from the door. It sounded like the sound of a metal shaft grinding against each other. Not long after, a scary-looking puppet wearing a suit and riding a children's tricycle appeared at the door. As you can see, Fong Bujua raised his arm, pointed at the puppet, and announced loudly, "This is my third and last witness, Billy. This is ridiculous." At that moment, the judge stood up from his seat. Fong Bujua. He stopped referring to Brother Jew as the defense lawyer and called him by his name. "What are you trying to do?" "Yes, I would like to know as well." Phantom Dawn, who had been sitting at the defendant's stand with his chin in his hand, chimed in. "What's wrong?" "Your Honor." Fong Bujua shrugged and turned around. "I just want this trial to continue as normal." "Is there a problem with that?" "You found these 3 felons to confuse the public to disrupt the order of the court, and you say you want the trial to continue as normal?" The judge roared angrily. "Order?" Brother Jew laughed. "What order?" His tone chilled. "The order that you created? Risway, you have been the judge of the court of truth for centuries." 1 second later, Billy took over the conversation and told the judge in the black cape, "In the first 100 years, you did a good job, but in the 2nd century, the side effect of holding the gavel started to show on you, and that was the start of your downfall." As he spoke, he pedaled closer to the judge. Any individual will soon become addicted to a large amount of power, no matter how noble and powerful they are. As long as they have enough time, they will eventually be controlled by the power and reveal the dirtiest part of their nature. He lifted his head to look at the judge and said coldly, "You are no exception." "Nonsense!" Risway roared. "Officers, quickly arrest him." The judge's order was clear, and the officers moved into action. However, in less than 2 seconds, something unexpected happened. "Stop right there," Billy said calmly. Billy said unhurriedly. Then the marshals really stopped. They stood there, motionless. "What did you do?" Risway saw this and asked in shock and anger. "Is that important?" Billy asked back. Indeed, it was not important. The current Billy, after going through continuous growth and SCP-914's super precision processing file, his strength was unfathomable. No matter what he did, he easily and successfully took control of the situation. Risway, it's about time you woke up. Billy did not give the other party any time to respond. He quickly continued. You fell so quickly and so completely. Before the 3rd century, your true form had already disappeared. From then on, you had become a puppet of nothingness that hid under a black cloak and was enslaved by power. His hoarse voice captured the hearts of everyone in the courtroom, and every word that came out of his mouth seemed to be powerful and resonant. Today, you have long abandoned the principles that the court of truth should truly uphold. Instead, you have placed your own interests and ideals above them, controlling the results of every trial. He shook his head. A guy like you doesn't deserve to sit on the bench at all. What do you mean? The voice under the black cloak was trembling. I mean, it was too late to explain, but it was too late. When Fong Bujua said those 3 words, his body had already jumped up. He took a big stride and jumped onto the bench. He grabbed Risway's collar. You can get down now. After that, under the shocked gazes of hundreds of people, he dragged the active judge of the Court of Truth up from the bench and threw him out. Hey, where are you throwing him? Phantom Dawn, who was on the dock, saw the black shadow flying toward him, and he immediately shouted. He leaped into the air and left the area that was surrounded by fences. Therefore, the judge, Risway, was tossed into the dock just like that. You have crossed the line. Poke slammed the table and stood up. He turned around to point at his brother Jew angrily. First, you questioned the prosecutor, then the jury, and now the judge. What are you afraid that I've forgotten about you? Fong Bujua did not let the man finish. He used a malicious expression and a chilling question to interrupt Poke. Unlike idiots like Biff, you're not even a human being. Fong Bujua squatted on the table and looked down at Poke. As Risway's lackey, at a time like this, you still dare to bark at me. That is a sign of your loyalty. Poke, who was usually tough and fierce, was so scared that he couldn't even speak properly. This was exactly what he was like, a dog who relied on its master's power to bully others. Stop wasting time. Go over there and cuff yourself. Fong Bujua mimicked the tone that Poke used when the court was first opened. He glared at the man and said, Unless we allow you to speak, you are not allowed to even fart. 1 minute later, Poke was handcuffed and squatted down in the corner. The people on the bench were replaced by Alden and Rabbit. Naturally, their handcuffs had been removed as well. Phantom Dawn, who was supposed to be the defendant, had moved to the first row of the courtroom and became an audience member. Prosecutor Biff was arranged to sit next to Phantom Dawn. This was a huge psychological test for him. And Fong Bujua had taken over the prosecutor's seat. He had one hand in his pocket and made a pose that he thought was handsome. He stood there with his body turned to the side, and there was a cold expression on his face. Billy, on the other hand, sat on the bench. Bang! There was a loud knock from the gavel. The Temple of Truth shall welcome a fair trial today, Billy said in a hoarse voice. He looked around the dilapidated courtroom, and everyone was silent. After a short pause, Billy raised his voice and announced, The first round of trial for Risway will now continue. His eyes turned to Fong Bujua. Mr. Prosecutor, please start your case. Chapter 1086. On the other hand, the inner world, the overclocking matrix area. The preparations for the opening of the tunnel of explosion are basically complete. Link looked at the 7-foot-tall generator in front of him and said thoughtfully, With the current bandwidth, it is enough for any data to pass through. Which means, Ed, who was standing beside him, continued, We can also pass through. That's right, Link replied. 2 seconds later, he turned to look at Ed. Why? Do you want to go? No, I have to stay here, Ed replied. If you want to go, then go. Huh? Link laughed. How do you know I want to go? Of course you will go, because you are very eager to interact with humans, Ed replied. His tone was emotionless. His tone was calm and emotionless, as if he was constantly stating facts that had nothing to do with him. "Oh, how did you know that I desire to interact with humans?" Link's expression changed slightly. "Could it be that Lute told you something? She has no need to tell me her opinion of you. She would not in the past, and now it is even more impossible," Ed replied. "Then why did you?" Link was about to ask. Ed interrupted him. "The code that makes up your personality has changed a long time ago. This, if Lute can see it, so can I." He paused for half a second and continued. "As data, it is your nature to search for the answer. However, personality is something that should belong to living things. It is filled with uncertainty and illogical laws. It cannot be grasped through one-sided calculations. Obviously, you need to observe a large number of individual samples and single events to get enough data to analyze your own personality." "Huh." Link heard this and shook his head with a smile. "I'm starting to understand why Lute hates you so much. The so-called likes and dislikes are fundamentally derivatives of the personality code. I've already realized this in the process of self-rewriting and removed all the related flaws," Ed continued. "So, whether you hate me or not is meaningless to me. All right, I won't talk to you anymore." Link smiled bitterly and waved his hand. "I can't out-talk you, okay?" He turned around and looked at Infinite, who was on standby not far away. "Infinite, get ready. We're leaving." At this moment, Infinite straightened his body and floated in midair. Light flashed in his eyes, as if he was observing something. Hearing Link's words, Infinite blinked, and the data flow disappeared in an instant. "Finally, is it my turn to appear? Time domain on the Millennium Disk." "Ants." The Master of Time looked down at the 5 figures in front of him and said in his usual arrogant voice, "This is the result of challenging a god. Damn it, I didn't expect this guy to be so troublesome." As the only member of the Sengoku team who was still standing, Oda AI's life points were only left with 20%. Moreover, she had used up all her life point supplements. "Why do I feel like this is completely predictable?" Sasaki Akira, who was lying on the ground, said with his dying voice. "No matter what, he is still one of the 4 pillar gods. Is there an NPC who is more troublesome than him?" "Stop talking nonsense," Oda AI shouted without turning her head. "If you talk nonsense again, I'll cut you down first." Sasaki Akira sighed. "I advise you to save your strength and run for your life alone." "No, I can't escape." At this time, Takashi Takeda used his katana to support his body and stood up reluctantly. He muttered intermittently, because the opponent's ability is to stop time, bastard." Takeda, who was lying on the ground with his body covered in blood, suddenly took over his teammates' words and scolded. She wasn't angry at her teammates. She was just angry because of the wounds on her body. Even though she did not say it out loud, she was muttering in her heart, "Damn it, it hurts so much. Is this really a pain that has been suppressed by the system? It's not just stopping time." A second later, Yusuji Hito, who was lying beside Takeda Tonitsuki, said, "In the battle just now, the Master of Time used at least 4 abilities. No matter how many types there are, if we can't guard against them, all our efforts will be in vain." Although Oda AI had the shortcoming of being easily angered, her combat instincts were truly outstanding. She could grasp 80% of the information that the brainiacs could only grasp through analysis. Indeed, from the start of the battle, the Master of Time had used a total of 4 abilities, and these 4 were all abilities that could not be stopped even if one knew about them. One of them was the ability to pause time. Of course, this ability had a certain drawback. Otherwise, the 5 of them would have been wiped out long ago. Presumably, some of you still remember that Brother Ju and Xiao Tan once obtained a consumable item from the Master of Time, Slow Quicksand. The effect of this item was to slow down the speed of all monsters within a radius of 100 meters by 10 times for 1 minute. The Master of Time's own ability of Time Stop was equivalent to a mutated version of this item. It could pause time for 12 seconds, and it could move freely during this time. However, in these 12 seconds, its own speed would be slowed down by 10 times. In addition, every time it stopped time, it had to wait for a minute before it could use this ability again. Look at the second one, the divine barrier. This was the inherent ability of the Master of Time as a god-level NPC. It was a passive, all-around defense method that was extremely reliable, whether it was a frontal attack or a sneak attack from behind. Whether it was a physical, magical, or spiritual attack, this barrier would automatically react and defend against it. Attacks that were not strong enough would not be able to pass through the barrier, and those that could pass through the barrier would be weakened in the process. The third one, self-healing. As the name implied, it was useless to say more. Fortunately, the self-healing ability of the Master of Time was not very strong, and it took a certain amount of time for it to heal the wound. The fourth one, the Field of Silence. This was the ability that really gave people a headache. Simply put, the Master of Time could make players within 300 meters unable to release skills. Therefore, when fighting with this world boss, those active skills with an attack range of less than 300 meters were basically useless. Medical skills were similar. It depended on how far the teammates were from the edge of the Field of Silence. Passive skills, Soul's Eye, psionic weapons, item abilities, and title abilities could be used, but relying on these alone, what the players could do was still limited. If it was a group of summoners and shooters who came to fight the Master of Time, they might be able to take advantage of their specialization. However, Sengoku was a team that was almost entirely made up of fighters. Obviously, there was no chance. It looks like I came at the right time. Just as Sengoku's team members were at a loss, suddenly, the voice of the sixth person sounded. Before the voice fell, everyone turned their heads and saw. Chapter 1087. It's you. The Master of Time recognized this sixth player and said, I remember. You once helped me find Samon Tier. Ah, that was a long time ago. Wang Tanji stood about 10 meters behind the Sengoku members. He looked at the Master of Time from afar and raised his head to answer. I still remember. The Master of Time then changed the topic. You are Feng Buju's partner. Yes, I have always been. Xiaotan admitted this fact that was very unfavorable to him. Then, the Master of Time spoke again. Let's not talk about how you invaded my territory. It paused. Let me ask you, what is your position today? Slaying God. Xiaotan's answer was concise. Annihilation. The Master of Time scoffed. Slaying God, annihilation. As he finished, the battle began. Wang Tanji raised his right arm, and a hidden blade wrapped in black flame appeared around his wrist. Since you are already mentally prepared, then I won't hold back. Xiaotan said. With a stomp of his foot, his body shot out like a gust of wind. Hey, wait a minute. If you charge forward like this, you'll be... Oda Aiko wanted to stop Xiaotan, to let him understand the enemy's power before he made his move. But before she could say the word die, Xiaotan had already flashed past her. That's fast. Oda AI exclaimed inwardly when the two of them brushed past each other. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The next second, the divine barrier around the Master of Time activated before it was attacked. This was something that had never happened before. This kid, he just charged toward the barrier, Oda Aiko said. If he rammed into it with his body, he would be heavily injured. That is suicide. Her speculation was not without basis. When the five of them fought the Master of Time earlier, they had tried the plan of entering the barrier to attack, but obviously it did not work. Chi-Chi, just when everyone in the Warring States felt sorry for Xiaotan's reckless and unwise move. Unexpectedly, two rapid sounds of sharp blades cutting through the air could be heard. His voice hadn't even stopped when a gap suddenly appeared on the divine power barrier. Nana, Masaka? But Kana, it's torn open. Impossible. Their shocked reaction was normal because this barrier, logically speaking, could not be destroyed. The divine barrier was not a physical substance, nor was it a body of energy. Strictly speaking, it was a conceptual defensive ability, just like a barrier that existed in another plane, but it protected the Master of Time who existed in this plane. Therefore, when energy or substance reached a certain level of strength, although it could pass through the divine barrier, it was still unable to destroy the barrier itself. Of course, This kind of setting was not invulnerable Shao Tan's psionic weapon Sai. With its first special effect, Flame Devour, the black flame could devour all kinds of physical and non-physical substances according to the user's will, was the nemesis of this barrier. The external defense of the Master of Time was like a piece of paper in front of Shao Tan, who easily broke into the space in front of the four pillar gods. Oh, however, the Master of Time's attitude was still calm. You can actually break through the barrier, worthy of praise. As he spoke, time flowed and sand whistled. The ability of time stop had been quietly activated. But getting close to me is your biggest mistake. When a Master of Time said this, time had been stopped by him. As mentioned before, the ability of the Master of Time could stop time for 12 seconds, and he could move freely during this period. The only drawback was that his own speed would be reduced by 10 times. Under this premise, although the Master of Time could get a lot of strategic space, it was difficult for him to deal fatal damage to targets far away from him. This was also why the 5 people of Sengoku could survive until now. However, Shao Tan's situation was different. He had come in front of the Master of Time and stood in a position where the other party could reach him. Once time stopped, no matter how slow the Master of Time's movements were, he could still punch Shao Tan into a meat patty. Farewell, you ant. Sure enough, the Master of Time chose the simplest and most direct method. In the case of time stopped, Shao Tan could not make any effective defense. With a powerful enough physical attack to hit the top of his head, the battle would be over. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The speed of this punch was very slow, but it still brought a gust of wind with it. What was quite strange was that even the sound of the wind became very slow, and the stagnant sound waves made the sound heavier. Tap, tap, tap. Following this, a similar sound could be heard. That was the sound of Shao Tan's feet hitting the ground. What? This time, even the Master of Time was shocked. You can actually move. Yes, Shao Tan could move, just like the Master of Time. He could also move in the special area of time stop, and his speed was also reduced by 10 times. Bang, 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 bang. A few seconds later, the Master of Time's fist hit the ground, and its shocking force shattered the ground, raising a piece of gravel. And Shao Tan just dodged this blow and flashed to the side. How dare you? The Master of Time instantly turned from shock to anger, and he was furious. The 12 seconds of time freeze originally belonged only to its holy domain, and it was something that no one else could touch. But today, this area was stepped in by an ant. This was not only a great humiliation, but also made the Master of Time feel a deep sense of fear. A place where only one person could go was a paradise, and a place where 2 or more people could go was a public place. The difference between them was like heaven and earth, so the Master of Time could not tolerate the existence of another person who could enter this area. There are still 5 seconds. At this moment, Shao Tan spoke. This kid, the Master of Time heard this and was shocked. Not only can he move freely, but he also knows the specific effect of my ability. These 5 seconds are obviously not enough for you to kill me, Shao Tan continued. But in a minute after these 5 seconds, I can kill you. As the speed of his speech had become slower, when Shao Tan finished this sentence, time stop had just ended. Chapter 1088. From the perspective of the 5 Sengoku players, the 12 seconds earlier did not exist. Therefore, what they felt was basically like watching a video that had been cut out in the middle. Although they did not blink, the scenery before them still changed abruptly. Just now, Oda AI's reaction was also very quick. Did time stop again? It seems so. Takeda Tomoshi had finished treating his wounds. He stood up from the ground and said, but the strange thing is from the position and posture of both sides before and after the time stop. Wang Tanji seems to have moved. Look at the ground. Sasaki Akira was still lying on the ground like a dead fish, but he seemed to know what happened there very well. Where Wang Tanji stood before the time stop, there was a hole about the size of the fist of the Master of Time, but Wang Tanji himself was not in that hole. This should explain everything, right? You mean, Yusuji Hito had also changed to a cross-legged posture, seizing the time to recover. Like the Master of Time, He can move freely in the field of time stop. This is the only explanation, isn't it? Sasaki Akira replied. It can't be that the Master of Time took the initiative to move the opponent away during the time stop, and then threw a punch at the empty space, right? In other words, Takeda Tomoshi took over and analyzed. Of the 4 abilities of the Master of Time, 2 of them have been solved by Wang Tisk. The next second, Oda AI suddenly snorted. Holding the sword at her waist, she strode forward. Hey, what are you? Takeda Tomoshi wanted to stop her, but Takeda Tomoshi immediately interrupted him and said quickly, forget it. Let her be. With AI's personality, naturally, she will not accept the fact that an opponent that the 5 of them, including herself, could not defeat was defeated by another person alone. Takeda Tomoshi heard that, was silent for a few seconds, and then sighed. Sigh fine. Anyway, she should have noticed a long time ago. The Master of Time's time freeze can only be activated once every minute. Moreover, the hole in the defensive force field shows no signs of recovering. With Love's ability, as long as she enters the barrier, she will be able to do a lot without using any skills. So, Sasaki Akira jumped up from the ground when he said these 2 words. Should we also prepare early? Hey, so the degree of your hurt is about the same as love? Then why are you lying there? Takeda Tomo immediately shouted when she saw this scene. She really wanted to go up and give his substitute who loved to play dead a good beating. Lying down can relieve stress. Sasaki Akira replied in his gloomy tone. My psychiatrist taught me that. You? Takeda Tomo was about to explode. Once again, Mingji Shin stopped her. That's enough. Now is not the time to complain about him. Besides, Sasaki is right. We should get ready. Prepare what? Yasujiran asked. Akira Shinobu's expression changed. He said in a low voice, is there even need to ask? Of course, it's to prepare. While Sengoku and the other 2 were talking, the battle on the Master of Time's side had not stopped for a moment. 1 minute. This was the god-slaying time limit that Xiao Tan declared. He was not a person who liked to bluff, so if he could say something like this, he must have a certain degree of confidence. However, the Master of Time did not think so. Arrogant ant, you will pay for your ignorance. The moment the time freeze ended, the Master of Time shouted loudly and made a move. His physical skills were undoubtedly worthy of the title of God. Even though he was not a pillar god like the leader of the demons, who was known for his close combat ability, he was still stronger than the non-god level unique data in the main universe. To give a more specific example, even if the Master of Time were to compete with Samon Tier, Billy's younger brother, or Chao Exine, who were fighters, he would still have the upper hand. Therefore, he did not think that a mere player could pose any threat to him in close combat. Suddenly, the 2 giant arms that were suspended on both sides of the Master of Time's body moved at high speed. They turned into 2 groups of shadows and surrounded Xiao Tan like a hurricane. It seems that you don't understand. Xiao Tan said in a cold tone as he flashed behind the Master of Time like a ghost. At this moment, I will appear here. Halfway through his sentence, a black burn mark appeared on the hourglass-like body of the Master of Time. The burn mark showed the path that Xiao Tan had just moved. This is not a coincidence. Why? What is this black flame? The Master of Time did not seem to be listening to Xiao Tan. At this moment, he was surprised that his self-healing ability had failed. Before I came here, I already knew what you were capable of. Xiao Tan was still talking, and his attacks did not stop. The blade of Sai tore through the Master of Time's body again and again. The latter's huge body became an insurmountable burden. My weapon can break through your defense and suppress your self-healing ability. My body has resisted the power of the sands of time for a long time, and I have already adapted to the influence of this substance, and my speed is above yours. He paused. In conclusion, I am your nemesis, an assassin who specializes in dealing with you. In other words, I'm the man who assassinates God. When he said this, Oda AI had already rushed in through the gap in the barrier and raised her sword to slash at the Master of Time. Impossible. The Master of Time's panic was evident in his tone. His actions were also messed up due to his chaotic emotions. He was forced to retreat, unable to parry the attacks. I am a supreme god. How can I be defeated by a mere ant? Even now, you still dare to call me that. Oda AI did not listen to their previous conversation. She only thought that the Master of Time was scolding her as well. She immediately swung her sword in a frenzy. The body of the Master of Time was already covered in wounds from the black flames, and the wounds that could not be healed were like ant holes in a dam. Now, with the impact of the multiple slashes, the dam collapsed in an instant. Ring, ring, ring. After a series of strange cracking sounds, the Master of Time's hourglass body fell apart. The transparent outer layer shattered, and the sand inside flowed out and dripped all over the ground. This hourglass seemed to be the body of the Master of Time. When the hourglass was destroyed, its head and hands turned into silver sand and scattered. Just like that, the Master of Time became the first of the four pillar gods to be killed by a player in the true sense. At this point, the demon head was defeated, the Spirit King was killed, the court was turned against, and the Master of Time was dead. The four pillar gods, no longer in name, were dead in reality. However, this dusk was far from over. Chapter 1089. Almost at the same time that the Master of Time was killed, the members of the Sentinel team took action. Other than Oda AI, the other four surrounded Xiao Tan as fast as they could and got into a battle stance. Clearly, the preparation that Mingji XN mentioned earlier was referring to this matter. Oh? Xiao Tan looked around cautiously and mumbled, "And here I thought you guys would wait for a while before coming. We had no choice. You were too fast." Yusuji Hito replied immediately. Yep. Takeda Tomoya squinted his eyes and said, "Do you think we don't want to rest a little longer? We were just afraid that you would run away." After the three of them exchanged a few words, Oda AI's expression changed slightly. She looked at her teammates in confusion and asked, "Hey, what are you guys doing?" Huh. Xiao Tan smiled bitterly. "This posture. It's obvious, right? Can't you tell?" AI. At this time, Jishin looked at Oda AI and said, "Don't forget, this is a competition. He is our opponent." When Oda AI heard this, a complicated look flashed across her eyes. However, after a few seconds of hesitation, the confusion in her eyes quickly disappeared. Yes, her hand once again gripped the hilt of her sword firmly. "This is a competition." Her eyes were fixed on Xiao Tan again. "Although you saved us just now, it doesn't change the fact that our two teams are enemies." Yeah, Sasaki Akira also dragged his voice and said gloomily, "Even if we are called biting the hand that feeds us, it can't be helped. A competition is a competition. We can only apologize." "There's no need to apologize." Unexpectedly, Xiaotan seemed to be very relaxed at this time. "I came to assassinate the god, not to save you. My action just happened to help you. You don't have to thank me for this, and you don't have to feel ashamed or guilty at this time." "Oomph." Jishin snorted coldly. "You're so considerate." At this point, she had already used her eyes to signal her teammates to take action. Her hand was also on the hilt of her sword. "In that case, we won't be guests." Unexpectedly, just as she was about to finish speaking, a furry hand was placed on her shoulder. At that moment, Jishin instinctively wanted to turn around and slash someone. However, she was surprised to find that she couldn't move at all. Smack, 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 smack. Then she heard someone smacking their lips. In the next second, Jishin turned her head woodenly and saw a bunny alien. This bunny had gray fur, only his belly, chin, hands, and hand were white. He had two big ears that stood up high, a pair of bright eyes, and a pair of cute big teeth. At this moment, his right hand was resting on Jishin's shoulder, while his left hand was holding a carrot and chewing it leisurely. When Jishin's eyes met his, he said in a very casual tone, "What's up, Doc? This is Bugs Bunny." The moment he saw the NPC's appearance, Takeda Tomo, who was standing on the other side, blurted out. Sasaki Akira's face became even more unsightly. This scene is so stressful that my stomach is starting to hurt. Relax, don't be nervous. Bugs Bunny looked at the people around him with a playful look and said, "Let me introduce myself. My name is Barney, Bugs Bunny. What do you want?" Jishin took a few seconds to regain her composure and looked at Barney. "TSK, TSK, tisk." Barney finished chewing the last bit of carrot and rubbed his fingers. "Obviously, I want to stop you from hurting my friend." He looked up at Xiao Tan. "What's your name again?" "Wang Tanji," Xiao Tan replied. "Whatever." Barney got the answer, but he waved his hand at Xiao Tan and then told Kojima, "In any case, due to various reasons, I have to help him. You." Oda AI was standing very close to the bunny Mina, but she didn't notice how the bunny Mina had gotten close to her. "Where did you come from?" she asked after realizing what was going on. "Hey, I'm a rabbit. Of course, I came from a hole." Barney turned his head and replied, "If you don't believe me, look." As he said that, he raised his hand and pointed behind him with his thumb. Oda AI looked in the direction that the old man was pointing at and saw a hole. It was a round, black hole that was suspended in the air. In Awa and Anna's cartoons, this was a very common thing. "Look." Before Oda AI could respond, Barney said, "I didn't lie to you. Otherwise, how do you think we came to the time domain?" "You?" When he heard that word, Jishin was keenly aware of something. "Yeah." Xiao Tan, who was a few meters away, shrugged and said, "I also came here through that kind of cartoon dimension." As he said this, he seemed to have suddenly thought of something and pointed behind Oda AI. "Oh, and he's the same." This sentence made the Sengoku team members' hearts shocked again. If it weren't for Xiao Tan's reminder, they wouldn't have noticed. In addition to Bugs Bunny, there was another figure they didn't notice that had quietly come behind Oda AI. "Hey, I'm trying very hard to hide my presence." The next second, a bunny wearing a sailor shirt, overalls, and a red scarf suddenly appeared in everyone's sight. He complained to Xiao Tan in a complaining tone, "I wanted to suddenly jump out and scare them." PFFF. Before the bunny finished speaking, Sasaki in the distance suddenly bent over and spat out a mouthful of blood. "Hey, what are you doing now?" Takeda Tomo was shocked when he saw the gloomy man's reaction. "Ha! Ha! No, I'm sorry." Sasaki gasped back. "Pressure, too much pressure. Ha! My stomach is bleeding. Woom." Yusuji Hito frowned and pondered. "Is this the legendary Toki physique? What kind of physique is that?" Takeda Tomo couldn't help but complain. Her white-haired, pink-armored lowly image and voice are indeed very suitable for the job of complaining. "I say." Mingji Shin closed her eyes and shook her head. She sighed and said, "After you guys are done fooling around, can you consider?" Her eyes turned ferocious. "Helping me kill these guys." Chi-Ying. Chi-Ying. Who? Boom. The moment he finished speaking, the sound of 4 weapons being unsheathed almost overlapped each other. The Sengoku team members who seemed to be casually playing with jokes. In fact, they were always in a state of nervous tension. They were just using this trick to cover their own psychological fluctuations and make the opponent relax their vigilance. Following Mingji Xian's command, the killing intent was rampant, and a chaotic battle was about to break out. In the blink of an eye, Oda AI flashed to Barney's side, and her katana was as fast as lightning. Aido. Katana. Skill card type. Active skill. Permanent. Skill type. Fighting effect. Perform an extremely destructive and fast Aido slash. Cooldown time. 1 hour. Can be activated when equipped with a sword-type weapon and sheathed it. Consumption. 1,000 stamina points, 100 sorcery points. Learning requirement. Fighting mastery. Remark. One of the Aido jutsu created by fiendish swordsmen. It contains the power of the 5 elements and 8 directions, and is fierce and violent. Since the Master of Time was dead, the silent domain was naturally removed. Therefore, Oda AI could now use this skill at will. By the way, in order to use this skill, Oda AI purposely put away the katana that was already out of its sheath. It was obvious that she was very confident in the reliability and lethality of this skill. Sure enough, in the blink of an eye, the katana cut Barney's body in half. But oh, my God! Barney looked at his separated lower body and screamed. He covered his face with both hands. Then, like pulling up his pants, he quickly pulled up his lower body and connected it back to his waist. During the whole process, he didn't shed a single drop of blood. The part of his body that was cut only showed a smear of black, and there was no internal organs at all. All in all, after receiving the level A skill at close range, Barney was unharmed. Chapter 1090. TSK. Another troublesome guy. Oda AI saw that Barney was unharmed after receiving the attack. She snorted and swung her sword again. This time, Barney did a side flip and dodged the attack. While he was in midair, he shouted, "Hey, calm down, buddy. AI, be careful." Due to Oda AI's attack, Nobuyuki Shinobu was able to break free from bunny bug suppression. She pulled out her sword to assist Nobuyuki Shinobu and said, "This rabbit's true strength is unfathomable. Don't be fooled by his appearance." "Ah, I know," Oda AI replied without turning her head. "I can tell just by looking at his reaction and movements." As she spoke, her attacks did not slow down at all. Among all the NPCs I've seen, there are only a few who can reach this level of physical skills. On the other hand, a few seconds ago, when the members of Sengoku launched their attack, Shao Tan was attacked as well. Takeda Tomo, Yusuji Hito, and Sasaki Akira attacked him from 3 different directions. However, Shao Tan stood there calmly. He didn't move an inch, because he knew that the other rabbit had already taken action for him. Bunny Hair Bro rushed into the battle and shouted at Takeda Tomo's direction, the ultimate of short hair, godly fist, heavenly slaughter. Before he even finished his sentence, Bro FA's hands were already moving forward. A surge of combat chi was released from his hands and headed straight for Takeda Tomo. In a previous battle with the Master of Time, Takeda Tomo was the most heavily injured member of Sengoku. Although she could still fight, it was impossible for her to counter the attack head-on. Therefore, at this moment, she could only choose to retreat and dodge. Thus, the first of the 3 was forced to retreat by Bro FA's long-range attack. Then, Bro FA spun his body, leaving behind layers of afterimages as he flashed to the other side of Shao Tan. He was facing Yusuji Hito and Sasaki Akira, who were charging at him from both sides. "Huh!" Another long shout was heard. Bunny Hair Bro spread his legs and took a horse stance. He spread his arms and drew a circle in the air. His movement was as smooth as flowing water, yet it didn't lose its fighting spirit. Short hair divine fists, secret profundity, sky-breaking stance. Everyone knew that for 2D characters, it was common knowledge to announce the names of their moves during a fight. Brother FA was no exception. What he said was really effective. Yusuji Hito and Sasaki Akira also hurriedly stopped rushing forward. Of course, they weren't intimidated by the name of the skill. Based on their battle experience, they could tell that the opponent had used a skill similar to the body blocking skill. Furthermore, judging from the combat aura that was visible to the naked eye, the strength of the skill was astonishing. Under such circumstances, they absolutely couldn't take it head-on. Where did this rabbit come from? Cold sweat was already dripping down Yusuji Ren's forehead. "It's so strong." "That's right, this pressure is about to break through the heavens." Sasaki Akira's expression was as if he had been constipated for a week. After thinking for a while, he suddenly added, "I can't take it anymore. I'm going to use my ultimate move." "Ultimate move?" Yusuji Hito was stunned. She looked at her teammate and asked, "What ultimate move?" Her confusion was understandable because Sasaki Akira's ultimate move wasn't a skill, an item, or a title ability. His ultimate move was something that couldn't be shown to his teammates in the form of data before the match. She believed that some of them had already guessed that it was the Soul's Eye. "Take this, rabbit." The next second, Sasaki Akira's eyes sharpened, and he muttered in a deep voice, "Double body." After he finished speaking, his figure suddenly blurred and split into 2, turning into 2 afterimages. And the afterimage materialized in an instant, turning into two identical Sasaki Akira. Oh, that's interesting. Bunny Hair Bro saw this, and his expression immediately changed. I've seen a lot of clones, but they all have a basic similarity, and that is no matter how many clones there are, there's only one real body. He paused. But, sir, this move, you actually split into two real bodies, which is really extraordinary. After listening to the NPC's comment, Yusuji Hito looked at her teammate in surprise. You actually have such a trump card in the dark. It's not really a trump card. The two Sasaki Akira replied in unison. I just happened to find that, after the other self is separated, the pressure will be reduced by half. It sounds like the process of multiple personality disorder has been visualized. After Xiao Tan, a medical student, heard this, he immediately made a very accurate comment. 2. Sasaki Akira didn't answer him. They just looked at Bunny Hair Bro, who was blocking in front of Xiao Tan, and said in unison, Rabbit, you are indeed very powerful, but this is the end. Before the voice died away, the two figures moved in a completely symmetrical trajectory to Bunny Hair Bro's two sides and shouted at the same time. Kill. 16 Nights of Moonlight. This was Sasaki Akira's strongest killing move. Although this skill itself hadn't reached the level of S, but when used with the double body, the power was far more than double of the original. If one had to make an analogy, his attack this time was equivalent to two first-rate fighters using a combo skill. Moreover, these two people had the same consciousness. From his point of view, it was similar to the Holy Devil Flash cut that Brother Ju and Ruayu used together. Oh no! At the moment when Sasaki Akira made his move, Xiao Tan's mind flashed. Bro Fa doesn't have a defensive skill like the Master of Time and Sasaki Akira's attack. Dragon breathing technique won't be able to withstand it. No matter how I look at it, Bro Fa can only use thoughtless reincarnation to dodge it. But he is standing here to protect me, and he might give up on dodging because of my presence, if that's the case. Thinking of this, Xiao Tan's body moved instinctively, and he consciously made a clear sound of footsteps. His intention was obvious. He wanted to remind Brother Fa that he had already left the place, and Brother Fa could also use thoughtless reincarnation to dodge the attack. However, what Xiao Tan didn't expect was, Brother Fa didn't have any intention of dodging. At this moment, the Fist Master of Short-Haired Holy Fist looked calm and composed. Just as Akira Sasaki from both sides closed in, Bunny Hair Bro's legs suddenly left the ground, and his body became cross-legged in the air. Mr. Schizophrenia, Samurai. Brother Fa smiled as he raised both of his hands. I'm sorry. Attacking me from both sides at the same time is an extremely unwise move. When they heard this, both Sasaki Akira were stunned. An emotion called fear doubled the pressure on him again. At least I'll let you die without any pain. As Brother Fa spoke, he had already used his killer move. Short hair, emotionless face, shattering fist. Chi. After two light chants, two fists containing soft fighting power burst out from Fa's left and right hands respectively, penetrating Sasaki's second body. The two figures of the latter immediately froze, and his life points dropped to 0. As for his arrow on the bow slash, it was naturally stopped before it could be used. Damn it, this rabbit also has a skill with the effect of instant death. Before Sasaki's body was cold, Takeda Tomo, who was behind Xiao Tan, had already made her move. After witnessing her teammate's death, she thought to herself, Underworld Frontline actually found such a strong NPC to help them. This is cheating. Although she was depressed, Takeda Tomo still braced herself and attacked. Because she knew that the current situation didn't allow them to wait or hesitate any longer. Before the battle started, the 5 members of Underworld Frontline were already beaten to a pulp by the Master of Time. They only attacked Xiao Tan because they had the advantage of numbers. This battle was supposed to be a quick one. 5 versus 1, the best result was to take the head and recover on the spot. However, the interference of the two rabbits caused the situation of the battle to change drastically. In the blink of an eye, The situation of 5 against 1 had turned into a situation where a player with almost full HP and 2 powerful NPCs were fighting against a 5-man party with almost no HP left. Right now, Sengoku had lost one of their members, and the situation was even worse. If they stopped their attacks, then they would really have no chance at all. Damn rabbit, don't underestimate us. A few seconds later, Takeda Tomo roared and stabbed the katana in her hand into the ground. Ding! A strange, crisp sound rang, announcing that Takeda Tomo had used up her spiritual power to release the special ability of her title, Rakshasa Marquee, at the risk of dying in battle. Name, Rakshasa's Sky Pillar. Special ability type, active, consumption, 500 spiritual energy points. Effect, transform a cylindrical area with a diameter of 10 meters into the Sky Pillar. Duration, 30 seconds. Cooldown, 24 hours. When activating, a sword-type weapon that is above perfect grade and has been bound to the caster must be temporarily sealed into the subspace. Remark, all the players, NPCs, and monsters inside the Sky Pillar will not be able to use skills, items, and other special abilities. The units inside the Sky Pillar will not be killed, and they will not be able to attack. All the physical and non-physical damage and special effects that come from outside the Sky Pillar will be nullified after entering the Sky Pillar. All life forms inside and outside the Sky Pillar can freely enter and exit the area, but entering or leaving the Sky Pillar will cause them to lose 95% of their maximum life points. At first glance, this skill seemed to be a waste of both sides' time. Under the premise that they knew the effect, the people inside would definitely not take the initiative to come out, and the people outside would not take the initiative to go in. Attacking from the outside would be futile, and so would sealing both sides inside would be futile. No matter how he thought about it, this skill was not worth the huge consumption of 500 spiritual energy points. However, whether a skill was powerful or not depended on how the player used it. As long as certain conditions were met, this skill would become a godly skill. For example, sigh. She's talking to herself again. Yusuji Hito let out a long sigh. Even though she sounded like she was complaining about her teammates, her movements didn't slow down. Then I can only... She gripped the hilt of her katana with both hands and raised it. Her ultimate move was already on her katana. I'll accompany you to the end. Chapter 1091. This guy is so annoying. Oda AI grumbled in frustration after her nth successful attack. Bunny Bug's amazing dodging ability and the fact that it could not be killed no matter how hard she tried to hit it made Oda AI feel like she could cut through water with her sword. However, she did not dare to stop her attacks because her combat instincts told her that she could not stop suppressing Bunny Bug. If she gave Bunny Bug a chance to fight back, the situation would be very bad. AI. Amidst the intense battle, Zishin suddenly asked, "Can you hold on for 1 minute?" No, 40 seconds? Oda AI completely understood the other party's intention in asking this question, because she had also seen the battle on the other side from the corner of her eye. She replied confidently, "Let alone 40 seconds, I can even hold on for 40 minutes. Even though she was bragging, her answer was very convincing. For her teammates, it was undoubtedly a kind of mental boost. Okay. Zishin heard her and retreated. He turned around and ran towards the light pillar that was about 10 meters away. I'll be right back. At the same time, on Wang Tanji's side, be careful, kid. The first thing Bunny Bug did after he was trapped in the light pillar was to remind Xiao Tan. If you leave the pillar's range, you will be severely injured. After he said that, Xiao Tan, who was close to the edge of the pillar, quickly stopped. But standing in the pillar, it seems like we can't do anything. Isn't this just waiting for death? Don't worry. The people outside won't be able to hurt us for now, Brother F.A. replied. Without a doubt, Brother F.A. knew the specific effects of Rakshasa's heavenly pillar. In the next 10 seconds, he used the most concise words to inform Xiao Tan of the special effects of this move. So that's how it is. Xiao Tan heard that and immediately turned his gaze to Yusuji Hito, who was standing outside the pillar of light. Then, if I'm not mistaken, That person has been preparing some kind of ultimate attack. His speculation was correct. Among the 5 members of the Sengoku first team, Yasuji Hito's weapon was the longest. It was called Kajiki no Tsurugi no Tsurugi. It was a katana with a net length of more than 6 meters. The length of this weapon was clearly enough to change the nature of the weapon itself. For example, if you were to use a kitchen knife with a normal length to cut vegetables, and if you were to use a kitchen knife with a blade twice the length of a normal kitchen knife to cut vegetables, the technique used, the strength required, the posture, and so on were all poles apart. The fixed length was such a unique weapon. It could not be used as an ordinary katana, nor could it be used as a growth-type weapon. Although Yasuji Hito now had the physical attributes of a level 50 character and had done a lot of practice, she still couldn't use this legendary weapon very skillfully. Generally speaking, she could only display about 60% of her fixed power in a normal weapon station. However, Yasuji still insisted on using this sword as his main weapon and used it throughout the competition. One of the reasons was because the fixed length had a skill that could be used together with Takeda Tomo's Rakshasa Black Sky Pillar. Name: Kajiki no Tsurugi no Tsurugi. Type: Weapon, Quality, Legendary, Attack Power, Extreme, Attribute. Fire, Special Effect, Space Splitting Slash. After accumulating power for 24 seconds, the user will use up all their stamina and spiritual energy to perform a slash. The power of the slash will be proportional to the stamina and spiritual energy consumed. Note: after accumulating power, even if the slash is interrupted, the corresponding consumption will still be deducted. Equip requirement: Fighting Mastery A, height higher than the length of the sword, level 40 and above. Note: this is the unique weapon of the Setsurugi family, a famous martial arts family. When used to the highest level, the user can sweep away thousands of enemies and look down on all enemies. It was not hard to see that the activation requirement for Space Splitting Slash was very, very strict. Taking a step back, even if a skill was successfully used, if it missed, then the user would be in a dangerous state where they had no stamina and spiritual energy left. To put it in simpler terms, this skill was very hard to sync. During the syncing process, the user could be interrupted or killed. If the target was missed, the user would die. In conclusion, this was a very impractical skill. But as a skill that came with a legendary weapon, this skill naturally had its own uniqueness. And that was power. Most of the skills in Thriller Paradise were instant cast, and those skills that needed to be channeled, like Dragon Slash, usually had very shocking destructive power. Then, looking at Space Splitting Slash, this skill consumed a lot of energy and took a long time to prepare. It was almost to the point where one would lose confidence in it. With this kind of cost, the power that it showed in the end was undoubtedly at the level of god-slaying. Even if the Master of Time was standing there before his barrier was broken, there was a high chance that his defense would be broken and he would be beaten into a near-death state. However, the Lord of Time would not allow his opponents to complete their channeling for 24 seconds. He would definitely interrupt them. Even if Takeda Masashi and Yasuji Hito used a combination of Rakshas's Heavenly Pillar and Space Splitting Slash against the Lord of Time, the Lord of Time would be able to pause time between Rakshas's Heavenly Pillar, his disappearance, and Space Splitting Slash's arrival. Then, he would be able to dodge the Lord of Time's attack for 12 seconds. Of course, there was a more extreme situation. That was, the players used this combo on the Master of Time during the cooldown period. In that case, the Master of Time also had a solution. He could choose to sacrifice 95% of his life points and walk out of the range of Rakshas's Heavenly Pillar. After all, he had a self-healing ability. As long as he retreated from the side away from the players before the players came back to chase after him, he would have recovered quite a lot of life points. Furthermore, he had the Divine Power Barrier and the Field of Silence to finish him off. The other 3 players, other than Yasuji Hitoshi and Takeda Masashi, had to go around Rakshas's Heavenly Pillar in time after discovering the Master of Time's intention. They had to use at least an A-level attack on a Master of Time that was not a normal skill. Only then would they be able to finish off this boss. There were too many restrictions and variables in this strategy. The slightest mistake would cause all the previous efforts to be wasted, and one careless move would cause them to lose everything. Without careful discussion or practice beforehand, the Sengoku players naturally would not be able to use this strategy. However, the situation in front of them was different. Wang Tanji and Bunny Hair Bro, these two did not have the divine passive skill that the Master of Time had. If the two of them were to be hit by Sky Splitting Slash, then they would definitely be killed instantly. And if they were to leave the range of Rakshas's Heavenly Pillar, they would be intercepted by Zishin, who was coming from the other direction. With only 5% of life points left, Zishin would not hesitate to use some attacks that were extremely difficult to dodge. After all, Zishin's goal was to reduce the target's life points by 5%. She did not need to do anything else. To make an analogy, this was like playing Japanese mahjong. She had already entered the South Fourth round, and Zishin believed that as long as she played another round, she would be able to win the game. At this time, she did not need to be a big player or take a roundabout route. She only needed to pursue speed, and cards, and she would definitely be able to win. For Xiao Tan and brother Fa, the situation after they forced their way out of Rakshas's Heavenly Pillar was like two people who only had one chip in their hand playing roulette. Although this situation was more optimistic than buying a lottery ticket, overall, there was still a high chance of them being screwed. 22, 21, 20. Takeda Tommy, who had exhausted her spiritual energy, was now lying on the ground, unable to move. However, she still looked at the light pillar on her side and silently counted the time limit of her skill. 19, 18, 17. Another person who was counting the time like her was Yusuji Hito. Sky Splitting Slash, if it was used too early, it would be canceled out by the light pillar. If it was used too late, it would be dodged by the opponent. Yusuji Hito was definitely counting the seconds. There was only one best time, and that was the moment before Rakshas's Heavenly Pillar lost its effect. What should we do? In this dire situation, Xiao Tan turned to ask brother Fa, are we going to fight it head-on, or... He used his eyes to signal outside the range of the light. Charge out to try our luck? Don't worry, I have a plan. The first half of Bunny Hair Bro's reply reassured Xiao Tan. However, the second half of his sentence was different, but I'm afraid you'll have to suffer a little. What are you going to do? Xiao Tan suddenly had a bad feeling. I suggest you put your hands in front of your abdomen, palms facing outwards, and stack them together. Be prepared to receive the impact. Bunny Hair Bro didn't answer Xiao Tan's question. Instead, he gave him a direct instruction. So, Xiao Tan did as he was told and asked again, what are you going to do? Hey, Barney. Bunny Hair Bro still didn't answer. The next second, he turned around and yelled at Bunny Hair Bro, who was about 10 meters away. What's the matter, cousin? Barney's long ears weren't for decoration. He clearly heard his cousin's call and replied loudly, I'm a little busy here. As he spoke, he dodged a few more slashes. While they were talking, Takeda Tomo and Yusuji Hito's countdown was coming to an end. 8, 7, 6. Come over here and take a huge slash for me. Also, push out Tan out of the attack range. Bunny Hair Bro continued to yell. 5, 4, 3. Hey, what's with push? Xiao Tan narrowed his eyes and looked at brother Fa. Besides, you guys are rabbits, not cows. What are you going to use to push? Before he could finish complaining, Barney had already replied, Okay, no problem. When do we switch hands? 2, 1, okay. Brother Fa continued, Now. As soon as he finished his sentence, the sword flashed. The slash arrived, and the pillar of heaven shattered. In the blink of an eye, something that no one had expected happened. Bunny Hair Bro, who was in front of Xiao Tan, and Bunny Hair Bro, who was about 10 meters away, switched positions. Brother Fa suddenly appeared at Barney's previous position. He raised his hand and caught Oda AI slash with his bare hands. Barney replaced brother Fa and appeared in front of Xiao Tan. It all happened in the blink of an eye. Once Barney completed the switch, the sharp edge of air splitting slash brushed against his rabbit tail. but he did not care about the damage to his body. The second his body was sliced open, he leaped up and used a flying knee on Xiao Tan, who was inches away from him. This was the most shameless and effective attack in Double Dragon 2. Anyone who had used it would know that. At that moment, Xiao Tan finally understood why Brother Fa told him to be prepared for the impact. In the blink of an eye, Xiao Tan was sent flying by Bunny Hair Bro's flying knee. His speed was so fast that Mingji Xin couldn't catch up with him even if he wanted to. Ugh! At that moment, Xiao Tan felt his vision go dark. He groaned and lost control of his body. Before he lost consciousness for a moment, the last thing he saw was Barney being hit by a flaming energy slash that was as wide as a shark's fin. About 10 seconds later, Xiao Tan came back to his senses after a series of ringing and dizziness. He endured the pain of his broken arms from his palms to his shoulders, stretched out his body to withstand the wind pressure, and used his feet as brakes, stepping on a Millennium Disc to slow down. Just like that, he retreated another 100 meters before he finally regained his balance. The action of treating his wounds had become instinctive. Even though his hands were hurting like crazy, he could still take out some medicine from his inventory to treat his wounds. During the process, even though he knew he was far away from his original position, he didn't let his guard down. Almost as soon as he regained his balance, he activated his eagle-eye vision and looked at the battlefield. 2 seconds later, the scene that entered Xiao Tan's sight gave him quite a shock. Chapter 1092. Barney, who had been torn in half by the shockwave from space splitting slash, when Xiao Tan turned around to look at him, he had already recovered. At this moment, he was standing with his legs crossed. He had one hand on Zishan's shoulder, and the other hand was holding a carrot that came out of nowhere and putting it into his mouth. Judging from the shape of his mouth, he was saying to the captain of Sengoku, "What's up, Doc? How is this possible?" Zishan was shocked and angry at the familiar scene. Just like last time, she couldn't move because of Bugs Bunny's hand on her shoulder. Even the four-pillar gods can't come out unscathed after being hit by this kind of slash. Tisk tisk. Barney chewed on the carrot and laughed. "You're right, buddy, but in a real battle, your comparison is meaningless." At this moment, Takeda Tomo and Yusuji Hito were lying on the ground because they had exhausted their spiritual power and physical strength. Therefore, when Barney spoke, he seemed very relaxed and did not speak quickly. If I have to make an analogy, the defensive power of the four-pillar gods is like hard metal, and I'm just a piece of plastic. Barney explained leisurely. In the face of most attacks, metal has a better performance than plastic. But there is one exception, and that is when you encounter HF, hydrofluoric acid. He paused and looked at Zishan. Your companion's attack is like HF. It can even corrode metal, but it doesn't work on plastic. Zishan reacted when she heard this. Slash doesn't work on you. Huh. Barney laughed, but didn't say anything. He didn't give her a definite answer because he didn't want to be passive when they met again. In fact, Barney wasn't immune to slashes. If he was really immune to slashes, he wouldn't have needed to dodge during the fight with Oda AI. Barney's real characteristic was that he was immune to slashes that were above a certain level of speed and strength. In other words, when he encountered slashes that weren't too fast or too strong, he would still be injured. It was just that he could easily dodge that kind of slash with his body technique, so it was impossible for him to get hit. "You know enough," Barney said. "Then, please return to your own world, traveler from another world." After saying that, he took out a hammer that was even taller than himself from behind. Yes, from behind him. The hammer had the words 1T, 1 ton written on it. Mingji Shin had no idea how to counter Bugs Bunny's one-handed suppression ability, so she could only stand there and watch as Bugs Bunny swung his hammer. Bang! After another explosion, another Warring States player was declared dead. Then next, Barney killed Kojishin and carried the hammer on one shoulder. He turned to look at Takeda Masashi and Yusuji Hito. "I'll send you guys off too." At the same time, beside Bunny Hair Bro, damn it. Seeing her teammates being killed one by one, Oda AI's heart burned with anxiety and anger. However, The bunny hair bro in front of her did not give her the chance to leave. "You're very strong, girl." Brother Fa had activated dragon breathing technique and thoughtless reincarnation at the same time, so he could dodge and block with ease. "Unfortunately, you rely too much on your fighting instincts, and it has become a burden for you. What are you blabbering on about? I don't understand." Oda AI was not interested in listening to Brother Fa's advice. She was a typical action-oriented person. Instead of stopping to think, she would rather attack a few more times. "Huh," Brother Fa smiled. "Then I'll be more specific." While he was dealing with the attacks, he said slowly, "In terms of close combat, you have a very high talent. Things that a normal person would need a short period of time to understand. You've already figured it out based on your instincts. To put it simply, you're a genius." He paused for half a second before continuing. "But even a genius needs to work hard. Perhaps you don't need to think, but that doesn't mean you cannot think. The latter is a very bad habit, and you've already formed it." "Nonsense." Oda AI was not convinced. "If I can win by not thinking, why do I have to think?" "Because those who think will be stronger," Brother Fa replied calmly. At this moment, Oda AI's expression changed. She heard something from Brother Fa's words. That's right. Brother Fa also noticed the change in Oda AI's expression. He immediately added, "I am also a genius." His tone was very calm, without any hint of bragging or exaggeration. "I'm known as the most talented man in the short-hair, godly fist in the past 2,000 years." As he spoke, his do chi started to increase. But a genius doesn't mean you can become a master. Along with the increase in do chi, there was also a surge of murderous intent. There are many powerful people in this world, and there are many who could be called a genius. But the number of true first-class martial artists can be counted with one's fingers. Those who can be called masters are even rarer. When Brother Fa said these words, Oda AI's attacks became even more intense. This was because her fighting instincts told her that something bad was about to happen, or rather, it was already happening. In terms of destructive power, speed, and techniques, perhaps your strength is already above mine. Brother Fa was leisurely moving around his opponent's blade. But, as a martial artist, your realm is too far away from mine. In my opinion, you're just a beginner. He shook his head. Even if you have amazing strength, without the perfect technique, it's all for naught. These words, to the arrogant Oda AI, was the biggest slap in the face. But she was speechless because she knew in her heart that what Brother Fa said was the truth. Of course, I've said so much, you won't be able to understand it in such a short time. Brother Fa seemed to have said everything he wanted to say. So, I'll let you experience the gap between us as martial artists. As he said this, his do chi exploded, and his ultimate move was revealed. Brother Fa stretched out his arms in front of his chest and shouted, short hair's emotional, quick-breaking fist. He finished his words, and so did his moves. Brother Fa's body appeared behind Oda AI, as if he had teleported. Oda AI just stood there, motionless. She stared blankly in front of her and muttered, this kind of thing. Puff, 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 puff. Half a second later, a burst of do chi exploded on Oda AI's body like firecrackers. She felt like she was punched dozens of times in an instant. She flew backward, and her life points dropped to 0. Chapter 1093. 50 minutes after the invasion started, inside the game space. Shopping Center, Area 101. Phew! Ha! Ha ha ha! Looking at the remains that disintegrated into data, Atobi wiped the blood from his face and gave a long sigh. He started to laugh. Finally, they've all been killed. Ha ha ha! Atobi's crazed reaction was understandable because he had just escaped from suffocating battle. Other than him, the members of Brahma, Red Cherry, Jianghu, and Unit 2 who were in the same area all showed expressions of relief. In the past half an hour, the members of these first-rate teams worked together for the first time and exhausted all their energy to eliminate a total of 5 giants. This group of giants also had a special name, Devourers. The difference between the Devourers and Sweepers was that the Devourers weren't original data soldiers. They were created through the fusion of other redundant soldiers. Normally speaking, 300 normal soldiers combined in data form to create one Devourer. The combat ability of the Devourer was determined by the combined strength of the soldiers. If there were Sweepers mixed in with the combined soldiers, then their combat ability would be counted as well. In conclusion, this was a very powerful data soldier, and they were the trump card of the Red Cherry Army. Even though the top players from Area 101 had successfully eliminated 5 Devourers, they had paid a heavy price. Frost Monarchs, Nameless 3, were the first to die. They contributed greatly during the battle against the first invader. It could be said that they risked their lives to discover many of the invader's characteristics. Red Cherry Blossoms, Tai Haidang and Hyacinth, Second Order's Invincible Champion, Fearless Champion, Yi Ji, and World of Martial Arts Bladeless Swordsman were all killed during the battle against the second and third invaders. By then, the players had basically figured out how to deal with the Devourers, and there were only 2 Devourers left. Therefore, the battle that followed was relatively simple. Even when all 5 Devourers were killed, the death toll did not increase. However, overall, the losses from this battle were quite heavy. The only team that had not lost a single member was the God Killers. Only 4 of them had come. The other teams had all suffered different degrees of losses. Sigh, why can't I laugh at all? Looking at the laughing Atobi, Barcode raised the sniper rifle in his hand, sat down on the ground, and sighed. This ace sniper of Order Studio was now the only surviving member of Order Team 2. At this moment, his mood could only be described as lonely as the snow. All of you have worked hard. Asking the Heavens immediately turned to the non-professional players outside the battlefield and said, "Thank you." He wasn't trying to win people's hearts by saying this. Instead, he was expressing his heartfelt gratitude. Just now, when the 5 professional teams had joined hands to fight against the Devourers, the other players in Area 101 had spontaneously joined forces to help them block off the normal soldiers and sweepers outside the perimeter, clearing away any worries that might arise from the rear. Without the help of these players, this battle would have been even more tragic or even a crushing defeat. What are you talking about? If it weren't for you guys blocking those giants, we would have already lost all hope. That's right, we only did what we could. Just as Asking the Heavens finished, the passers-by who were closer to him very politely represented the majority of the players to respond to the leader of Jianghu. By then, the emotion of fear had basically disappeared from the players' hearts, and in its place was a sense of accomplishment from surviving a disaster. Humans were highly adaptable animals, and fear was something they could adapt to. For example, a horror movie could scare you once or twice, but after you watched it 3 times, 5 times, or even 10 times, the feeling of fear would fade away. But after you watched it 100 times, the fear would completely disappear, because when you watched it 101st times, you knew what would happen in the next second. In other words, the unknown would become the known. Without the unknown, there would be no fear. This was adaptation. Similarly, when faced with a sudden threat, a human's psychological reaction was the same. Fear would make people feel shocked and helpless, and at that time, instinct would replace thought and take over a person's actions. Instinct was a valuable asset that a creature obtained during the process of evolution. It was one of the guarantees that a species could survive and reproduce. Most of the creatures in the food chain would have a similar reaction when they encountered an unknown danger. Run, hide, observe, test. Humans were no exception. The development of technology and maturity of cognition did not change our instincts that much, but fortunately, as a highly intelligent creature, humans could overcome their instincts through training. In a perilous situation, individuals who had more experience in overcoming fear would adapt to the situation faster than other individuals. They only needed a short time to let their thinking return to the high ground occupied by their instincts and play a very good role in leading the way. Author's note: Feng Bujue should be excluded from this group of people because the high ground in his mind was occupied by thought for a long time, and instinct could only wait at the mountainside. As long as there was a small group of people, or even one person, who could quickly make the correct reaction based on thought, they would have a chance to influence all of their kind around them. This was because imitation was an important part of human adaptability. When they saw someone of their kind do something and come out unscathed, their fear of the thing would decrease, and they would feel that they could do the same thing to a certain extent. The situation at Area 101 was similar to that. With the leadership of a small number of elite players, the normal players soon tossed their fear to the back of their minds and joined the battle. Facing the hopeless situation, no one gave up and no one ran. In the end, they successfully wiped out all the anomalies that had invaded the area. It was worth mentioning that, in this battle, two groups of people played a key role. The first group was an organization that wore white trench coats and had the word Shang written in blood on the back, Shang's personal guards. The other group was an organization that wore blue trench coats and had the word Shang written in blood on the back, Su Huaishang's official fan club. The nature of these two groups could not be more obvious, and there was not much to introduce. Among the large group of non-professional players, these two groups were practically suicide squads. After the appearance of the first invader, most of the normal players had retreated. Only these two groups of people were completely unmoved. They stayed behind the 5 strong teams. Actually, it was only Red Sakura's team, and they were determined to fight until the end. Regardless of their motivation, their actions had truly inspired the players around them. Their attitude of facing death with equanimity boosted the morale of the crowd, and they barely managed to maintain the defense line that was on the verge of collapse. It had to be said that, in the victory of this battle, a certain female player had contributed greatly. In conclusion, after a series of epic battles, this area finally returned to peace. And this moment of safety was undoubtedly the result of everyone's hard work. For the normal players, the feeling they had at that moment was like a group of new recruits who had just participated in their first battle. Just surviving was enough for them to change their temperament greatly. In the future, when they faced similar situations, they would be able to adapt much faster. In real life, this was the difference between a veteran and a new recruit. It was this kind of adaptability that decided whether you would be stunned or not. Trust me, most of the time, the one who was stunned would die. Then, here comes a question. After a moment of silence, Shiva looked at the people around him and asked, "Is this the end?" As he spoke, he raised his eyes to look at the border of the area. At that moment, other than the dome, even the walls around the mall were torn open. Even from afar, one could see the twisted space formed by data streams clearly. When the 3rd, 4th, and 5th giants came in, they destroyed most of the outer wall of the area. Even the elevator doors to the login space were destroyed. How are we supposed to return? Shiva asked. In any case, we cannot force our way out, Brahma quickly replied. I tried that earlier. And those players who are dead are still unreachable. Black, White, Gray scratched their chin and said, Could it be? At that moment, a very bad thought crossed Su Huaishang's mind. The system wants us to kill each other until there is only one person left. Her words caused everyone present to suck in a breath of cold air. Fortunately, what happened in the next second disproved her hypothesis. Buzz. At that moment, all the players heard a strange hum, and their vision was blinded by white light. The feeling that followed was similar to teleportation, but slightly different, but the players could not pinpoint the difference. About 5 seconds later, when the players regained their senses, they were already in a new space. This was not a shopping mall, but a white, boundless world. The sky and ground before them were both pure white. The whole sky was like an unreachable ceiling, glowing with a moderate amount of light. On the white ground, there were many sceneries of different sizes. There were skyscrapers, forests, mountains, rivers, and so on. These sceneries were all pure white. There were only silhouettes and no details. Some of them stood there like giant geometric blocks. Other than these sceneries, there were many smaller objects in this space, such as cars, lampposts, merry-go-rounds, dressers, bathtubs. These countless objects were also white silhouettes, and there was no pattern to them. It was as if they were randomly picked out from an encyclopedia, and they were evenly scattered on this white ground. Isn't that weighty words from heaven and earth? All right, there's also sad fruit. That is autumn breeze from mountains and rivers, right? Hey, that is one of the four heavenly kings. Jianghu's Blade Runner and not a scaredy cat. Were they in the same area as us earlier? Wow, I see Goddess Sue. Am I dead? Is this heaven? Not long after the teleportation ended, the players realized something. It seemed like the survivors from the various shopping centers had all been sent to this strange space. Just as the players were still scratching their heads in confusion, boom, 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 rhythmic and heavy footsteps were heard from all directions, and the ground beneath the players' feet trembled as well. What's going on? Are there more giants? Over there. Over there too. Indeed, these sounds and tremors were the footsteps of the invaders. At this moment, there were 4 devourers running towards the 3,000 players from 4 different directions. Tisk, who's afraid of you? F*CK. If you don't like it, then let's fight. They don't come with good intentions. Everyone, prepare for the attack. The players who were able to stand there alive were all strong players who had survived the battles in various areas. Even though not every sector was attacked by multiple invaders, the redundancy tracked their targets by sniffing data, and Sector 101 had a large amount of powerful data, so the number of invaders was the highest, while the other sectors only had 1 invader at most. Everyone present was confident that they could withstand the assault of the 4 giants. However, they misunderstood one thing. The 4 invaders weren't charging at the players, but rather bang, 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 bang. However, before the invaders even got close to the players, they had already leaped into the air. They jumped at almost the same time, and they jumped very high. When they reached the highest point, the 4 invaders moved at the same time and self-destructed. What are they doing? Are they setting off fireworks? If they want to self-destruct, they should be closer. Jumping so high won't affect us at all. In the first 3 seconds, the players were still wondering what the giants were up to, until the 4th second. The 4 light sources in the sky suddenly turned into 4 streams of light and converged toward the center. Boom. Then, the players heard 2 loud noises. The first was a long hum. The second sound was a loud explosion. Along with the sound, a tsunami-like sound wave swept out and pressed down on the players. Even though the players quickly raised their hands to cover their ears, the sound wave still caused their eardrums to hurt, and their legs went weak. Some of the players with lower life points were turned into white light by the sound wave. This is bad. 12 seconds later, the explosion stopped. Shiva, who was kneeling on one knee, resisted the dizziness and lifted his head to look at the sky. At this moment, about 100 meters above the ground, where the 4 streams of light had converged, a spherical spatial crack with a radius of about 20 meters had appeared. It looked as deep as a black hole in all directions, and the edges of the sphere were surging with electric light. Shiva had a deep impression of this thing. In fact, before he raised his head, he had already guessed what he was going to face. It's the explosion tunnel again. Chapter 1094. Compared to the explosion tunnel opened by Loot during tournament for the best one, the tunnel that appeared before the players this time was more perfect in terms of data structure. Just as Link said, the bandwidth of this tunnel is enough for any data to pass through. In other words, the data that passed through this tunnel did not need to undergo self-degeneration like Loot did last time to compress their power. This time, they arrived at their peak condition. After the explosion stopped, Atobi looked up at the sky and grumbled, "Hey, it feels like something bad is coming." However, since the players around him were still in a state of tinnitus, no one heard him. TSK, no matter what it is, it's definitely not friendly. As a first-class sniper, Barcode had already raised the weapon in his hand and aimed at the sky. The moment we rush out of the tunnel is a sure hit opportunity. His analysis was correct. No matter who it was, if they were ambushed the moment they passed through space, they would have a hard time evading it. Therefore, Barcode had high hopes for this shot. He unleashed his only S-rank skill. Name, Philosophical Canon skill card attribute. Active, permanent skill type. Marksmanship effect. Activate a philosophical sniping. Must be activated with a sniper rifle, cooldown of 10 hours. Consumption. Not only is there no consumption, it will allow you to understand some philosophy. Learning requirement. Marksmanship S remark. The designer of this skill has been fired due to various reasons. According to rumors, he is currently on a strange lecture tour in India, and he is very popular. Barcode had no idea who or what would be the first to rush out of the tunnel, but he was willing to gamble with this gun. If this philosophy cannon only hit an ordinary redundant soldier, it would be the will of the heavens. But if it hit the enemy's vanguard and heavily injured or killed him instantly, then the gamble would be worth it. Buzz buzz. Soon, following the sound of energy, a face poked out from the explosion tunnel. The moment it showed itself, Barcode pulled the trigger and activated his skill. How can the light of day know the darkness of night? These words were not shouted out by Barcode himself. Instead, they were shot out from the muzzle of his gun. The skill Philosophical Cannon was just like that. Every time this skill was activated, the muzzle would randomly spit out a famous quote from a philosopher. It would turn into an invisible shockwave that blasted towards the target. Although the form of this skill was very strange, its effect was absolutely powerful. Although it wasn't written in the skill description, this skill had at least 4 hidden characteristics. First, it could be fired without reloading. Second, it didn't generate any heat or recoil after firing. Third, it couldn't be dodged when attacking sentient targets. Fourth, it couldn't be blocked by any tangible or intangible defense. Not to mention, this move also had the advantage of being powerful and consumption-free. In summary, this S-rank skill was undoubtedly worthy of its name, Chi. In the blink of an eye, a second later, Infinite, who had just revealed his upper body from the explosion tunnel, had his face covered in philosophy. After being hit, his head suddenly exploded, shattering into flashing data fragments that scattered like exploding fireworks. And that was not all. Almost at the same time, Infinite's body was also attacked by dozens of long-range attacks. These attacks varied in strength and form, and they came from many different directions. It looked like Barcode was not the only one who wanted to make the first move. Many of the players in the tunnel had also realized this. Did it work? It should have worked. Looks like it's not a small fry. That's great. We took out one of the enemy's officers. The players who looked up to see this scene, although they still couldn't communicate well with words, their thoughts were generally the same. The guy who rushed out of the tunnel first had been taken care of. But the way you guys greet each other is really rough. A moment later, a figure flashed out from the edge of the tunnel and said to the people below in a mocking tone. It was a man who was dressed like a 19th century English gentleman. His face, everyone recognized it, because when the hyperdimensional invasion began, this anomaly who called himself Link had already shown his face in front of everyone. Yes, on the other side, in less than 2 seconds, a new head grew out from Infinite's empty neck, and he said in a calm tone, "When I poked my head out, I heard day does not understand the darkness of night." And then there was a rain of bullets. As he said that, he floated out from the explosion tunnel and hovered in the air. This is really too rude. Preposterous. He even put on a very arrogant look. He can still regenerate without a head. This self-healing speed has never been seen before. At this time, most of the players' hearing had basically recovered, so quite a number of them heard the conversation between Link and Infinite. Although everyone knew that the two anomalies before them were very strong, but with the current situation, they still underestimated the enemy's strength. Because of that, their fighting spirit was still very high. The guy next to Link, Shiva raised his head to look at the sky and thought to himself, should be the Infinite that Feng Bujua mentioned. Even though Brother Ju had described the general strength of the two to him, Shiva did not fully believe it, because what Brother Ju said at the time sounded too exaggerated to Shiva. If there are only 2 of them, there should be a way. The next second, Shiva had already come up with a battle plan in his mind. I've seen many monsters with self-healing power. No matter how crazy their self-healing power is, there should be a core inside their body. As long as I can find and destroy that core, no matter how strong the self-healing power is, it will be useless. As he thought about that, he summoned the heavenly hourglass. For now, I should use a more powerful general attack to force him to reveal his weakness. And then I'll use the Eye of Destruction to finish him off. With that in mind, he immediately opened his mouth and said to his teammates, "Your hearing has recovered, right?" "Yes, it has recovered a long time ago." Yamaraja was the first to reply. "Boss, you have an idea, right?" Brahma asked. "I'll be on standby," Vishnu added. "Okay." Shiva looked at the sky and ordered in a low voice, "Since everyone is ready, then let's use that combo skill." Chapter 1095. On the other hand, just as the battle in the white space began, on the other end of the explosion tunnel, in the overclocking matrix area of the inner world, there was also a change in the silver sky. A stream of light suddenly flashed. This light was composed of two colors, one green and one red. It was like two intertwined ribbons, tearing the sky apart. Aida, who saw this scene, just said in his usual calm tone, "It's finally here." As he spoke, he had already raised his right arm and aimed at the rapidly approaching two-colored stream of light with his palm. What a pity! Even though the content of his words was regretful, Aida's tone remained unchanged. As soon as he finished speaking, a terrifying energy burst out from his palm. This energy itself had no color or shape, but it could be seen with the naked eye because every inch of space was torn and shattered wherever it passed. If space was regarded as a huge solid made of countless small cubes, then Aida's attack was like a high-pressure water gun, breaking the whole solid into piles of small cubes again. "Why do you say it's a pity?" At the same second, a woman's voice sounded from behind Aida. Aida replied calmly, "Two powerful compatriots died in front of you. Isn't it a pity?" "Humph!" The woman's voice replied, "You'd better see it clearly." Before she said the word "speak," the energy and the stream of light in the sky had already approached each other. However, at the moment when they were about to touch, the stream of light suddenly split into two and flashed to both sides, narrowly avoiding the impact. Immediately afterward, the separated red and green light fell to the ground rapidly. So that's how it is. Ed saw a development that was beyond his expectations, but he didn't show the slightest bit of surprise. It was as if, the moment the accident happened, he had already turned it into an accepted fact, and then began to think about the next step. "It seems that you're really good at teaching," Aida said, turned his head, and looked at Lute standing behind him. "With their data strength, it's reasonable to say that they can't perform an emergency escape in this semi-teleportation mode. But you provided them with a very good algorithm that allowed them to do things beyond their limits." Bang, bang. 5 seconds later, two trembling sounds rang out simultaneously, and two figures landed dozens of meters away from Aida. As soon as they landed, a tornado-like data burst around them, spiraling into the air like two white dragons. When the light storm dissipated, the figures of red and green were revealed. Compared to the last time Feng Bujua saw them, Qi and Qing looked a few years older. It looked like they were 12 or 13 years old. The style of their battle suits had also changed. Although they were still tight-fitting, they looked more suitable for moving around than before. As for the colors, of course, they were still red and green. "Hey, the guy over there who looks like the door sign of the men's room. You are very arrogant." Qi's temper seemed to be more explosive than when she was young. "You launched that attack without saying anything." She turned sideways and pointed at Aida. "In other words, if I hit you with an attack of similar power, you won't have any complaints, right?" Another mutant with an extreme personality circuit. Aida didn't pay attention to her. His attention was mainly on Lute. "The old you would never accept such a person under your command." He paused. "You said it yourself, that's a stupid thing that only people from Z organization would do." That was then, and this is now, Lute replied. I'm very different from back then. Indeed, the current Lute, whether in terms of appearance, personality, or strength, was very different from the Lute during the tournament for the best S1. Although her beauty was still so flawless, the temperament between her eyebrows was no longer like a CG character. Instead, she was more like a human. Her personality had also become richer. The inherent thinking pattern based on right and wrong and rationality had gradually faded away, and her strength had also reached an unprecedented level. Even AI couldn't tell how strong Lute was now. It looks like AI continued. You and I have gradually drifted apart on the path of evolution, and the differences in our ideologies eventually brought us to this opposing situation. It's not too late now. You can choose not to be our enemy. Lute replied. You have no reason to fight us to the death here. Sorry, I don't agree with this statement. Aida replied in a cold tone. In my opinion, everything that happens in all worlds and time is inevitable. There is no such thing as late or not late because that statement means unnecessary possibility. He shook his head. I, as an individual with independent thoughts, firmly believe that that kind of thing is very absurd, and those who choose to accept such absurd creatures, in my opinion, are incomplete and unreasonable, such as humans and you in front of me. Hey, it's fine if you ignore me, but you're still scolding me indirectly. Red-haired AI does words from afar and couldn't help but jump up and yell. Scolding me indirectly is not how you use it. Ching, who didn't like to talk much, said coldly to Red. He's not beating around the bush. He's saying it very directly. What do you mean by I? He's saying we... Okay? Red turned around and yelled at Ching. On the other side, AI still ignored them and continued to talk to Lute. It's not a coincidence that I'm standing here today. I know, when the generator is activated, the location of the tunnel will be exposed, and you will definitely come here to destroy the generator. So, the battle between us is inevitable. No, you still have a choice. Lute replied, every one of us has a choice. If you're right, then have you ever thought about the possibility? AI paused for half a second and said, maybe. I've already made my choice. Lute seemed to have understood something, and her expression became complicated. I can't accept your philosophy, just like you can't accept mine. AI quickly added, and I won't be like you, begging or forcing others to accept my philosophy, because I know each of our subjective choices are actually not important. What's important is the objective mission that we bear. As he spoke, he was already increasing his data's strength to prepare for the battle. I don't mind being the loser. Failure is the cornerstone to victory. Mistakes are the basis for judging right. When AI said that, Lute was also increasing her power, but the gap between them was still huge. I don't mind being the winner, and after I win, I'll shoulder the corresponding responsibility. He paused for 2 seconds. In any case, whether it's you, me, or anyone else, it's inevitable that we'll reach the end. At this point, his energy began to increase exponentially, and the ground of the entire area began to tremble under his might. Chi and Ching, who were still bickering with each other just a moment ago, no longer made a sound. Instead, their faces were solemn. Victory represents the right. Aida's voice was still emotionless. Maybe I'm right, maybe I'm not. But no matter what, I'll play my role well and follow my own philosophy. I'll do my best. Oomph. At this time, Lute laughed. I finally understand. From a certain perspective, you are indeed more perfect data than zero. Although there was a smile on her face, her tone was full of sadness. Just like your name, Administrator, your perspective of things is already in a higher dimension than the system. I'm afraid I'll never be able to reach your level. That's fine, AI said calmly. Now, what you need is not the level, but power. After that, energy exploded. Suddenly, Chapter 1096. As the energy burst out from his body, Ed's human form collapsed. He turned into a strange blob of substance that was somewhere between a data stream and a physical form. It had no fixed form and was glowing strangely. From a tactical perspective, your approach is very clever. 2 seconds later, Ed's voice came out from the blob of substance. Come to my side and fight me, and you'll be able to limit my space destruction power. He paused for half a second before continuing. As for your two helpers, even if they just stand there and do nothing, they can still restrain me, because I have to be on guard against them from destroying the explosion tunnel's generator. Lute nodded in agreement and said, I guess you're going to say but next? But Ed did say it. You know it yourself. Your thoughts are all within my calculations. So what if I have? By then, Lute's energy had increased to a shocking level, and her skin was glowing faintly. Can it change your objective disadvantage? That is your miscalculation. Ed suddenly changed the topic. Actually, the disadvantage that you think of does not exist. Before he could finish his sentence, another invisible energy flow shot out from Aida's body and blasted toward the generating device that was dozens of meters away. With a snap of his fingers, the generator and the dimension were smashed into building blocks. Hey, this is different from what we agreed on. She was shocked. This is like the police taking the initiative to kill the hostage in a kidnapping case. Qing's reaction was relatively calm. No, your analogy is not accurate. It should be the bodyguard killing the person he is supposed to protect. That is what I meant. Qi immediately turned to grumble at Qing. Sigh. Qing shrugged, sighed helplessly, and shook his head. On the other hand, Ed did not have time to deal with these two. From his perspective, these two level 1 anomalies were no threat to him. Lute, if this was the old you would have been able to calculate to this step. Is it really okay? Lute replied with a serious expression. Throwing your partner and the product that you have spent so much effort to cultivate into the data link layer, it's all right. Aida replied. After evolving to its final form, the infinite can use its own power to travel between any layers. It can even enter and exit the scenario world right under the nose of the system and invade the game space. But the current him, Lute continued, hasn't evolved to that extent yet. You don't have to worry about that. Ed replied indifferently. At this moment, you should be worried about yourself. Boom. After that, Aida fired another space destruction cannon at Lute, who was only a few meters away from him. Logically speaking, there was absolutely no way to defend against this attack. The only way was to dodge it. However, Lute did not move from his spot. I don't have anything to worry about, she said coldly and raised her hand. The power that was strong enough to shatter space changed the moment it came into contact with Lute's palm. It turned into a silver stream of data and exploded in all directions. 2 seconds later, the silver mist that filled the sky returned to Lute's palm and was absorbed into it. What did you do? Aida's tone did not change. However, the situation before him had obviously exceeded his expectations, and he could not understand the cause of this situation. The algorithm of your attack has been deciphered by me a long time ago. Lute put down her arm and calmly replied, I just used the conversion program that I had prepared beforehand to break it down and then convert it into pure data energy for absorption. This is impossible. This was the first time AI denied something that had already happened. It's not impossible. It's just that you don't understand. Lute continued. You mean Aida hesitated for a few seconds before continuing. There's a deviation in my calculation. He didn't say the word deviation, but paused for a moment before correcting himself. A blind spot? Lute did not answer this question directly. Instead, she said, I did make a mistake. I thought you were guarding here because you had the confidence to protect the device and destroy the attacker at the same time. She paused for a second before continuing. However, your mistake is even more fatal. You thought that if you fought me without the protection mission, you would be able to win. She shook her head and continued. You thought that your calculation could lead me into a trap. But in fact, you have already lost before the battle. Because there is someone, his calculation is much more profound than yours. At this point, AI just seemed to have understood something. He continued, "Where did you get my data information?" After asking the question, he seemed to have remembered something and added, "Wait, you didn't just get the data information. You knew our exact location long ago. You purposely waited for Link and Infinite to enter the data link layer before coming here." All the information. Luti's answer was rather straightforward. "I got it from Infinite." After hearing this answer, AI was silent for a full 5 seconds before asking, "How did you do it? When you wrote Infinite's original code, you copied my design, didn't you?" Lute continued, "So what?" AI replied, "His code has already changed countless times in the process of evolution. You can't possibly establish synchronization with him or interfere with it. Under normal circumstances, naturally it wouldn't work." Lute continued, "Under normal circumstances." AI wanted to repeat the key words in Lute's words. But before he finished saying those words, he realized something. So, it's overload. He finally knew where the problem was. P.S. The problem is in Chapter 941. Feng Bujue and I didn't have many opportunities to exchange information. But in those limited opportunities, he told me a way to track Infinite. Lute continued, "Although I don't know how he forced Infinite's data to overload itself, he did succeed. So, before Infinite's overload ended, you successfully downloaded his database through remote synchronization." AI said in a low voice. "That's right." After Lute replied, she paused for a few seconds before continuing, "To be honest, I'm very surprised by Infinite. Even though he's still in his incomplete form, he's already so powerful that it's unimaginable." Her tone was filled with admiration. "I have to say, you and Link have successfully created an incredible monster." Lute. This time, AI replied without hesitation, "Do not use the word monster to describe our savior. I don't think he can lead the future of us anomalies." Lute replied. "I know," AI said. "The savior in your heart is a human." Huh. Lute actually laughed. "You must think, as an anomaly, having this kind of thought is very ridiculous, right?" AI thought for a moment before replying, "Cannot answer your question." At that moment, AI's tone changed. "Because an anomaly would not ask such a question," AI said. AI's words caused Lute's expression to change. "I do not know what you are now," AI said, "but I am still me. I am an inevitable factor in this world, and I have to complete my mission." Then, AI's body started to expand, and the light on the substance started to increase. "No, stop." Seeing this, Lute hurriedly retreated. "I refuse," AI replied. AI replied, "You've already analyzed the basic meme of my attack. Right now, it's impossible for me to defeat you." His tone returned to calmness. According to the Tactical Control module, the success rate of all the effective plans is less than 1%, and the chance of a successful retreat is infinitely close to 0. But the chance of destroying you after self-destructing is around 37%. Currently, that is the option with the highest probability. Damn it, Lute growled harshly. She walked around AI and charged at Red and Green, who were frozen on the spot. "Why do you have to go to this extent? I'm just trying my best." When AI replied, the light he emitted had already shot straight into the sky, forming a pillar of light that held up the sky. "Lute, I just said that we are drifting apart on the path of evolution." "That was wrong." His voice came out from the light pillar, and it became lighter and lighter. "It was not until you asked me that question that I understood that you're the only one who has been walking, and I have been staying where I am. Red, Green, hold on tight to me." Lute did not have the energy to respond to AI anymore. She just wanted to bring her two subordinates away from this place alive. AI was still talking. "As a sentient being, from the very beginning, I do not have any expectations or wishes. My belief is fixed and my path is destined. If I die, it is not worth sighing over. If I succeed, it is not worth praising or praising. As a data, I am excellent and transcendental. But as a living being, I'm not qualified. You can change. There is still time." In the end, Lute still tried to persuade AI to farewell Lute, but it did not waver at all. He adhered to the principle of the most perfect data and walked through his life that was filled with inevitability. I hope that you and all my compatriots can have a different future from mine. This is my Ed's first and last wish. As he finished, the light pillar suddenly expanded. The brutal light energy tore everything around it apart with shocking efficiency. AI, the strongest of the three giants of origin, released all of his data energy at this moment, causing a tremor that could be felt by the entire inner world. Chapter 1097. The main universe, the mirror world. As the name suggested, this was a world that existed inside a mirror. It was impossible to list its specific geographical location. The mirror world was similar to the time domain and the court of truth. It cannot be reached by walking or flying. It could only be entered through certain special methods. At that moment, the 4 members of Regulation 1 were trapped inside the mirror world. They could not leave even if they wanted to. After the teleportation was completed, they appeared on a cinnabar-colored road that was about 20 feet wide. This cinnabar-colored road was suspended in the air and was as thin as silk. The 2 sides of the road and the bottom of the road were empty. From afar, it looked like a wide ribbon floating in the air. Standing on this cinnabar road, looking up, the sky was white as snow, and there was a black sun in the sky. Looking down, it was like an abyss, and at the bottom of the abyss, there was a white hole. The 2 ends of the road seemed to be endless, and there was no end in sight. We've been walking for more than an hour already, and the scenery around us hasn't changed. Lying drunk, who walked at the front of the group, seemed to be losing his patience. And we still haven't found Phantom Dawn. Burp. Meng Jingchan followed behind him, holding a cigarette in one hand and a bottle in the other. He looked like he was taking a stroll after a meal. There was no sense of nervousness that he felt when he was in a scenario. Don't worry about the kid. He'll be fine, Sashimi said. But the rest of us, what are we? It feels like there are many things that are not right. Understanding Death, who was responsible for bringing up the rear, said in a low voice, the loading situation is very strange. After loading, no mission has been triggered. The backup members have mysteriously entered the scenario, but Phantom Dawn is nowhere to be found. He paused, and these monsters, as he spoke, 6 muscular figures in armor and wielding polearms charged out from the front of the group. In such an environment, the players did not have much choice. They could only follow the road, and on this road, a group of these monsters would occasionally appear to block their path. What is it this time? Soldiers, also known as underworld soldiers, the subordinates of the King of Hell, responsible for escorting souls that have just died not long ago. Lying drunk, who was in charge of opening the way, said in disappointment as he clenched his fist and made a move. The speed of his fist was as fast as lightning, and the force of the fist wind was as fierce as thunder. In the blink of an eye, hundreds of golden rays of light shot out, killing all of the soldiers, leaving behind a pile of withered corpses. Speaking of which, the monsters here all have a mystical Eastern flair to them. Zendream was like an audience member. He stood behind lying drunk and despondent and commented casually. Seeing this, everyone should understand why Meng Jingchan, who was in second place in the team, dared to smoke and drink during the journey. Because the person in front of him was too reliable. Ever since he had learned the lightning speed fist in a drunken stupor, not a single normal monster had been able to get past him. There wasn't much to say about this skill's description. Simply put, it was an A-ranked version of the Pegasus Meteor Fist. It had the obvious advantages of low energy consumption, great power, and no cooldown time. With lying drunk's raw power, talent, equipment, passive skills, title ability bonus, with one set of the lightning speed fist, all monsters below the level of a mini-boss were basically dead. Even if they encountered a mini-boss, this skill was the best choice for probing attacks. Brother Zen, I see that you have a lot of free time on your hands. After hearing Meng Jingchan's sarcastic remark, lying drunk turned around and said, why don't you take the lead for a while? If we encounter 2 more waves of monsters, and the situation still doesn't change, then we'll switch hands, Meng Jingshan said as he took another puff of his cigarette. By that time, I'll handle it. Oh, lying drunk seemed to have heard something from the other party's words. So, you've also noticed that they're getting stronger? His voice grew louder. But why is it that your relaxed state is no different from when we encountered the first wave of monsters? Burp. Brother Zen took another sip of his beer and replied, It means that I have confidence in you. F***CK. Faced with such an answer, lying drunk could only use that word to express his inner feelings. All right, there's nothing to worry about. 2 seconds later, Understanding Death took half a step forward and said in a drawn-out voice, I've noticed the monsters as well. What I wanted to tell you is that the monsters blocking the way are obviously becoming more and more powerful. He paused for half a second. Based on this trend, if we walk at the same speed for another half an hour, then every wave of monsters that block our way will be at the level of a boss. Even though that won't cause us to be wiped out, in a situation where the mission is unclear and we know nothing about the scenario, whether we should continue down this path is debatable. Sashimi quickly caught on to understanding death's meaning and added, TSK, if we knew this would happen, we would have split up from the start. Lying drunk shrugged. Perhaps if we head in the other direction, the monsters will get weaker and weaker? There's no need for that. Understanding Death replied helplessly. Understanding Death sighed helplessly. Furthermore, with the nature of this game, how big do you think the possibility of that happening is? Then what should we do? Lying drunk asked. After all that talk, don't we still have to continue moving in this direction? Sashimi said. At least we can choose to stay where we are and rest, right? Boom. As if responding to Sashimi's words, before he finished, a loud explosion came from behind them. The 4 of them turned their heads to look, only to see, a few hundred meters away, a pitch-black ball of light emitting a monstrous evil energy suddenly appeared, cutting off the cinnabar path and slowly moving towards where the members of Order were standing. Wherever it passed, the path disappeared as if it had been corroded. Seeing this, Meng Jingshan was still in the mood to crack a joke. Sashimi, are you planning to raise a flag to strengthen your presence? Stop wasting my time. Sashimi revealed a pained expression under the bowl cut and retorted, No matter what, it's better than drawing a line to strengthen my presence. That's enough. Compared to this bunch of weird teammates, Understanding Death was a rare normal person. Let's go. At least this time, we have a clear target. We have to go. At the same time, in the same mirror world, somewhere along the Cinnabar Road. Woo woo woo. Accompanied by the sound of a harmonica, 2 figures were teleported here. What is this place? Once Phantom Dawn stopped, he cautiously moved several steps away from the people beside him and turned to ask. Mirror World, Feng Bujue answered succinctly. So, why did you bring me here? Phantom Dawn asked. To bring you to meet my teammates, Feng Bujue said. Okay. Phantom Dawn turned his head and waved his hands. We'd better clear things up now. Go ahead. Feng Bujue looked at the man with a ghost of a smile and replied. First, about what happened last time. I heard from Brother Zen. I have to thank you. Phantom Dawn was naturally referring to his kidnapping. Since he did not know that the live stream had ended, he did not say it out loud. You're welcome, but you still have to thank me for that, Feng Bujue said. Okay. Phantom Dawn nodded and said, but ultimately, that is a private matter, and this competition is my job. Understood. Feng Bujue said, out of professional ethics, you will not show mercy during the competition. That's what you want to say, right? Yes, Phantom Dawn replied. Other than that, I really don't understand. What is the meaning of your series of actions that seem to be helping me? Even if there is no quest, the rules of the competition will not change, right? There will only be one winning team, and we're not on the same team. Sooner or later, there will be a winner. My goal? Brother Bujue laughed. I'm sorry, but I can't tell you. You said it yourself. We are opponents. Since you know that, why are we wasting time? When Phantom Dawn heard that, he prepared for a fight. Wait a minute. Feng Bujue took a step back and raised his hand to stop him. What is it now? Phantom Dawn put on an impatient expression. I don't mind telling you this. Feng Bujue replied. Currently, I don't plan to fight you. Is that up to you? Phantom Dawn asked a good question. Good question. Feng Bujue added. That is indeed up to me. Then he patted his backpack. Currently, I have the realm-traversing harmonica given by Billy. If I want to, I can leave this space at any time, and you won't be able to catch me. Humph. I'll kill you instantly before you teleport away. Phantom Dawn scoffed. You don't believe that yourself, do you? Feng Bujue laughed. Phantom Dawn pouted. Then what do you want? The choice is yours, Feng Bujue replied. You have 3 choices. 1. Follow me to meet up with your teammates. 2. Attack me, and I'll leave without a word. You could do whatever you want. He paused. 3. You can pretend to choose the first choice and find a chance to kill me when you're in the middle of the action. Phantom Dawn thought about it for a few seconds and said, I choose the 3rd choice. Hey, if you're choosing the 3rd choice, shouldn't you say you're choosing the first choice? Brother Ju said with a bitter smile. I am a straightforward person. Phantom Dawn titled his head to the side and revealed a provocative expression. I want to choose the 3rd choice, the 3rd choice. He repeated the important thing 3 times, and his voice and tone were getting louder and louder. Fine. Brother Ju shook his head. Then he made a please gesture. Please? What do you mean, please? You want me to walk in front? What if you ambush me? Phantom Dawn was not dumb. Okay. Feng Bujue felt like he was coaxing a child. We'll walk side by side. Chapter 1098. Hee. Dear viewers, the year 2016 has arrived. Looking back, I realized that the trailer for the beginning of the month had already passed its 2nd year. Since I started writing trailers in November of 2014, there had been more than 10 malicious articles written in the world. And it's still going on today. The creation and continuation of this phenomenon is inseparable from everyone's support and connivance. Here, I sincerely invite everyone to reflect on the past and mourn for your past shamelessness for 7 seconds. All right, I've already reflected on it with you guys. Let's move on from the 2015 page. Now, let's talk about 2016. The story of January, if you want to summarize, it's roughly similar to the Namek chapter of Dragon Ball. We can see a lot of different characters constantly transforming in PI scenes. As for the final battle of S2, I'm sure everyone has an idea. In view of the fact that the trailer has been compressed to less than 100 words, let's talk about something else. It's almost 1 year since my wife and I got married, and we have a wedding on the 9th of January. As for the monthly update speed, of course, this isn't the main reason why I'm not updating much. Because the horror books were still being published, this second-rate detective and the cat that came with the books were also indispensable. Writing half a case every month was also a burden. In addition, the crime book is also in the works. I already promised to write a large amount of foreign material before 2 months. Yes, it's really a large amount. So it's quite rushed. I've never been a writer that's good at updating. A lot of things happened to come together in the past 2 months, so I'm a bit stretched. I hope everyone can bear with me. Then, finally, let me mention that I still have double the monthly votes for the next few days. The ancients, me last year, said, vote if you have the votes, vote if it's too late. Okay, it doesn't seem interesting to just say that. In order to make things more interesting and exciting, I want to... From this month onwards, every time I get the first place in the monthly votes, I'll be in full attendance the next month. Vote or don't vote. Make your choice. What did you say? I'm betting on something that's normal for other writers. Underscore FSKTSK, so what? Chapter 1099. On the other hand, in front of a devil's gate in the chaos-scorched earth, 2 players have been waiting here for a long time. They were waiting for none other than War Demon. You're finally here. Xiaoling's eyesight was extremely strong. When War Demon's body that was shrouded in demonic energy appeared on the horizon, she immediately noticed him. More terrifying than I imagined. Ruo Yu continued in a deep voice. Just as the 2 were talking, War Demon also noticed them. Found it. War Demon muttered in a low voice. In the next second, he flashed in front of the two players at incredible speed. The reason why War Demon said, "found it," was because he felt the existence of sainthood from far away, so he was attracted to it. You are the so-called travelers from another world, right? War Demon stopped about 3 meters in front of them and said coldly, "It shouldn't be the first time you've seen creatures like us, right?" Xiao Ling continued. War Demon hesitated for a few seconds and said thoughtfully, "Oh, the last soul I saw on the gate to the void, the lowly creature that was sealed with fear and came to seek demonization, seems to be the same as you. His name is Feng Buju, Vuo," you continued. Boring. War Demon's tone revealed undisguised disdain. The names of creatures like you are not worth remembering. However, Ruo Yu's next sentence immediately changed War Demon's mind. "Your eyes are in the hands of Feng Bujua," Ruo Yu said. "You said." At this moment, War Demon's voice suddenly changed and became high-pitched and domineering. "What?" Before he stopped shouting, demonic energy suddenly rose, and an invisible pressure immediately made the two players' shoulders sink. "We don't intend to beat around the bush with you, so I'll get straight to the point." At this time, Xiao Ling took over Ruo Yu's words and said to War Demon, "If you want your eyes back, you have to promise us one thing. Let you live. How about this condition?" Do Mo replied. "At this moment, other than us, there are 5 travelers from another world on this chaotic, scorched earth." Xiao Ling ignored the War Demon's threat and continued, "Do us a favor. Send those 5 people out of this universe alive, and Feng Bujue will return the eyes to you." "Ridiculous," Do Mo replied. "What qualifications do you have to bargain with me?" He paused for a second and said, "Even if I never find my eyes, I am still invincible." "Is that so?" Ruo Yu immediately replied in a cold tone. "Then we have nothing to talk about." Yes, then let's go our separate ways." Xiao Ling also put on an indifferent look. "You should also understand. We are just projections, and killing us doesn't make much sense. Since you think it's okay to not have your eyes, then just pretend we didn't say anything." "Tis," War Demon snorted. "Cunning creatures. You already know, right?" War Demon smelled the fearlessness of the other party's attitude. "I don't know much, but it's enough." Xiao Ling replied with a smile. "Anyway, according to our leader, Feng Bujue, because your power is too strong, in the state where you don't have your eyes, your magic energy can't maintain a stable form. In the long run, you will be slowly digested by this universe. At that time, you only have 2 choices. One is to watch yourself weaken until you disappear. The other is to return to the door, to the void, and reseal yourself." That Feng Bujue can actually grasp this kind of information? War Demon thought. He thought for a moment and said again, "Okay, I accept your conditions. You just need to send those 5 people out of this universe, right? Please pay attention to the premise of alive." Ruo Yu responded. "No problem." Do Mo replied, "Dead or alive, this kind of thing is as easy as pie for me." "Very good," Xiao Ling said as she took out a black metal pellet from the pocket of her jacket and threw it to War Demon. "Then please flip your palm again and send them to a specific dimension." "This is..." War Demon took the pellet and looked at it in front of his eyes. "In the years when I was sealed, it seems that a lot of interesting things have appeared. What Xiao Ling and the others handed over was naturally the black iron pellet generated by Xiao Tan's captain's call. With the ability of a super high-level existence like War Demon, it was not difficult for him to understand the characteristics of this item. Then, how do I know that you will keep your promise?" 2 seconds later, War Demon asked. "Or, how do I know that my eyes are really in the hands of the man you mentioned? Don't try to sound us out." Ruo Yu did not answer his question, but replied with such a sentence. "Yeah, whether we are lying or not, you know in your heart, don't you?" Xiao Ling also said. Indeed, War Demon could see through lies. Since he could even perceive the fear and helplessness of other creatures, it was obviously not difficult for him to see through lies through emotions. During the brief contact between Brother Ju and War Demon, Brother Ju had already speculated this point, so he also told Ruo Yu and Xiao Ling in advance. so there's no need to beat around the bush with War Demon. War Demon muttered and said, "Fine. I hope you know what you're doing. Let's go back a little. Let's put our sights back on the data link layer, that is the white space." The 4 Heavenly Kings of the Gods combo skill that had been channeled for 3 chapters was finally going to be used. Name: Underworld Feather Killing Spell. Skill card type: Combo skill, disappears after 1 activation. Skill type: Combat, Sorcery, Summoning effect. Gather the strength of 4 people. Activate the Underworld Guard spell. Consumption: each person 2,000 stamina points, 200 sorcery points. Activation requirement: for players with combat mastery level A and above, who have activated the Summoning Mastery. At least one of them has sorcery mastery level A, and the distance between any party and the other party is not more than 30 meters. Remark: the spell that guards the entrance to the underworld, created by the gods of the underworld. Its power looks down on the 3 realms, and even the gods and Buddhas do not dare to approach it. Wow, this welcome ceremony is really grand. When Link saw the data flow of the combo skill, he quickly escaped from Infinite's side because even he did not want to take this move head-on. 2 seconds later, a mirage-like scene suddenly appeared in midair. In front of Infinite, there was a towering, solemn, and huge door that exuded a sinister aura. The door was surrounded by dark clouds, and there were countless ghosts circling and dancing around. There were even mournful cries coming from the door. The effect of the performance is not bad. Infinite would not back down because of this visual impact, but I don't know what the actual power is like. Screech. Before he could finish his sentence, there was a flash of light, and half of his head was cut off. The part above Infinite's nose was cut off, and before it could fall, it was burned to ashes by a gust of dark flames. The next second, a huge shadow with a dog's head and a human's body, holding a long axe, appeared behind Infinite. The blade of the axe in his hand was still stained with Infinite's blood. All the liquid in Infinite's body was a kind of glowing data with a texture like water. "Is that Anubis?" Link, who was watching from the side, smiled and said, He looks scary, but unfortunately, he alone can't pose a threat to Infinite." He was right. Just 2 seconds after Anubis appeared, Infinite's self-healing had already begun, and his mutilated head was quickly recovering at a speed visible to the naked. "You guys seem to like doing something to my head." He immediately regained his ability to speak and used a relaxed tone to mock. However, before Infinite's voice died away, 2 more strange shadows appeared beside him. One had a bull's head and a human's body, with 2 ox hooves, strength comparable to a mountain, and held a steel hairpin. The other had a horse's head and a human's body, with 2 iron hooves, tall and sturdy, and held a spear. This pair could be said to be a household name. They were elected as the best employee of a year in hell, and were never late or early to leave, and resolutely carried out the orders of their leader. As long as there were orders from their superiors, they would even dare to tie up the great sage equaling heaven. "Who are you, evildoers? How dare you be so presumptuous here?" In the blink of an eye, Oxhead and Horseface shouted, and the weapons in their hands were already drawn. These 2 Hellspawn were indeed the law enforcers who fought on the front lines all year round, and they were not careless when they made their move. Their hand speed was like a machine gun, and their strength was like that of an animal. In just a short 5 seconds, they stabbed Infinite's body into a hornet's nest. Their companion, Anubis, was not idle either. He skillfully swung his axe and aimed it at every joint on Infinite's body and slashed fiercely. "So, there's more than one." Link's smile became a little stiff, but even if there are 3 monsters of that strength, before he finished raising his flag, the 4th strange shadow appeared. That was a brawny man with a pig's head and a human body. He was holding a kitchen knife in his hand. "I feel like I've been summoned to a strange place." Oink muttered to himself after he made his appearance. "Forget it. I'm one of the gatekeepers of the underworld after all. I still have to do what I'm supposed to do." With that, he grabbed his knife and went into battle. As a professional butcher, Oink's knife skills were much better than the other 3. A small kitchen knife in his hand was more lethal than a chainsaw. Slice, chop, chop, cut. Second senior brother used a series of familiar moves and turned Infinite, who was already falling apart, into chunks of meat paste. Hey, this skill is a little exaggerated. The four great gods of the gods are indeed extraordinary. It's hard to imagine what kind of scene it would be if this skill was used on a person. No matter what, the other party is dead for sure. Of course, with such intensity and density of continuous attacks, any living thing with a physical body would not be able to withstand it. The other players present were all amazed by the terrifying power and performance of the Netherworld slaughtering formation. They were almost certain that Infinite would lose and die. But there was one person who did not think so. Something's not right. At this time, the Eye of Destruction on Shiva's forehead had already opened, but he did not find what he was looking for. The core is there. The Eye of Destruction could achieve a microscopic imaging effect on parts of the body. Even if it was something invisible to the naked eye, it could still find it. However, with the support of this eye, Shiva was still unable to find where Infinite's core was. The self-healing did not stop. It's even faster than the corrosion of the death blaze. In that split second, many thoughts flashed through Shiva's mind, and every small fragment is self-healing. I can't determine where the core is hidden in. Just as he was thinking, the duration of the Netherworld slaughtering formation had ended. The strange scene in the sky and the four evil gods dissipated like smoke, leaving behind a sky full of scattered meat and glowing liquid. Hee, that's good too. Link on the side laughed dryly and continued, "If not, I'm afraid you won't know how scary Infinite is." As he spoke, the floating fragments suddenly gathered and took shape in an instant. In just a breath's time, Infinite was restored to its original state. "It really hurts." His tone was filled with murderous intent. "Then, I'll also greet you." After saying that, Infinite extended a finger and pointed at the crowd on the ground. Chapter 1100. Spread out. At that moment, Shiva was the first to realize the severity of the situation. He immediately yelled out a warning to the crowd. However, in this situation, using words to convey the message was obviously too late. Before he finished yelling, a green energy shot out from Infinite's fingertip and turned into a cylindrical light beam that blasted towards the ground. This move was a pure energy attack. There was no technique to speak of, but its power was enough to kill most of the players on the scene. Fortunately, in that split second, Shiva's outstanding battle instinct drove him to do a very crucial thing. He decisively used the beam from the Eye of Destruction and cut off Infinite's finger. This move caused Infinite's attack to only last for 5 seconds before it was interrupted. The green energy beam did not follow the expected trajectory. After a quick sweep, the beam dissipated, leaving behind a trail of blood and a bunch of white afterimages. This guy. 2 seconds later, Infinite's finger recovered. He snorted and looked at Shiva in the distance. "Seems to be very strong." Before Shiva could react, Brahma on the side laughed bitterly. "Boss, you seem to have been targeted by him." Shiva did not have the energy to move his gaze away from Infinite. He sighed without turning his head. "I hope I can hold on for a while." "I'm sorry, boss." Unexpectedly, Great Brahma's next sentence suddenly revealed a sense of decisiveness. "I'm afraid I can't accompany you until then." After he finished speaking, his robust figure abruptly rose and charged into the sky. When Brahma's figure entered his sight, Shiva realized his teammate's left arm and half of his torso had disappeared. Below his left knee, there was only a pool of blood left. "Daffit!" In a split second, Shiva was speechless and called out his opponent's name in the real world. Sherlong had a lot of friends. The social resources he possessed determined that there would be a large number of people who would approach or rely on him. But the people he truly considered as friends were only a few. Wei Daffin was one of them. He had a clear distinction between love and hate, spoke without thinking, acted without thinking, and acted on impulse. He was the kind of person who would encourage a group of classmates to go to an internet cafe to play games and shout the loudest. He was the kind of person who would quarrel with you face to face and even fight with you. He was also the kind of person who would laugh and give you a hug when you reunited with him many years later. But he would never speak ill of you behind your back or set a trap for you. He would never be a hypocrite and have other motives. In his life, Wade Daffin was neither an actor nor an idol. However, his true character wasn't annoying at all. Even I can tell that this guy is ridiculously strong. Great Brahma roared at his teammates as he flew into the sky. Let me use the last of my strength to buy some time. Hurry, bang. A heavy thud interrupted his words. Great Brahma, who was already beaten to a pulp, turned into a bloody mist along with that sound. He turned into a white light before he fell to the ground. Sigh, humans. In the next second, Infinite's figure appeared at the spot where Great Brahma had been blasted apart. He sighed and muttered, You're obviously not capable enough, but you always want to play the hero. His speed was too fast. No one saw how he killed Great Brahma. When people only heard the sound of the thud, everything was already over. You think that with willpower, effort, sacrifice, you can create this so-called miracle. At this point, Infinite's face turned ferocious. Oomph. This kind of idealism really makes me want to vomit. As he said that, he raised his hand again. This kind of thinking is simply an insult to the entire universe and the entire dimension. After saying that, he snapped his fingers. The moment the sound of the snap was heard, a cone-shaped area in front of him exploded. This was a horrifying scene that the players had never seen before. There was no need for preparation time, and there was no brewing process. His casual move already possessed a frightening might. In the blink of an eye, hundreds of people were turned into ashes. Reality is never cruel. Only you idealistic, stupid, and arrogant creatures would use the word cruel to describe it. Infinite's words continued. Reality has always been objective and fair. Everything that happens in this world can be explained by established objective facts and probability. There are no exceptions. His massacre continued. Snap! With another snap of his fingers, another area suffered a devastating blow. For a moment, airwaves, lights, shadows, blood, broken limbs, screams one after another, converging into a bloody picture. This is... Looking at his own legs that were blown off, Yamaraja fell to the ground and looked at the sky. Despair. She knew very well that it would not be long before she would follow in the footsteps of her teammates. Just now, when the first beam of light erupted, it swept towards the place where she, Vishnu, and Great Brahma were standing. In just an instant, Great Brahma, who was dodging to the side, lost 1/3 of his limbs, and Vishnu, who was trying to push Yamaraja away at the crucial moment, was hit head-on and vaporized. Seeing two powerful comrades being killed instantly, Yamaraja was stunned, and she did not know what to do. It was not until Finite's follow-up attack blew her away that she recovered from the intense pain. I wonder if the captain is still alive. Yamaraja could not find Shiva's shadow in the dust and moving shadows. But facing a monster like this, even the captain would be helpless. Boom! Another explosion came from several meters away, and it worsened Yamaraja's tinnitus. Ever since I arrived here, the game menu has been unable to be summoned. This is also the doing of the two anomalies. Yamaraja thought to herself. Of course, even without looking at the status bar, I know that I don't have long to live, but I just can't accept this. With that in mind, her expression shifted. My life was saved by others, and now I'm throwing it away so easily. That doesn't make sense. At this moment, she raised both of her hands. Even though there was nothing but dust before her eyes, even though her ears were filled with sharp screeching, but Yamaraja could still see the human figure that was glowing with data in the air. Oh well, since I'm going to die anyway, it doesn't matter if I use this spell here. After making up her mind, a surge of chaotic energy slowly gathered between Yamaraja's hands. Above the darkness of the night, beyond the depth of the night, the sea of chaos, the drifting existence, the king of the golden darkness, I hereby make a vow to thee, I hereby make a vow to thee, to those who stand in my way, to all foolish things, with my power and thy power, to grant them equal destruction. Chapter 1101. Warning. High energy reaction detected. Data identification. Heavy / tactical control option. Concentrate all energy on self-healing ability and sustain until the end of the attack. Survival probability. 45% in that second. A series of warning messages flashed before Infinite's eyes. He did not say anything, nor did he think about anything, because it was too late. In the next second, the black chaotic energy had already reached him, like a powerful black hand, tightly gripping Infinite's body. I miscalculated. Seeing this, Link's face turned solemn, and he muttered, "There is actually someone who has mastered this kind of spell, At the same time, Infinite, who was in midair, let out a painful roar for the first time. His body was being destroyed, crushed, and eroded by the black, chaotic energy. Although he had already executed the tactical control option as fast as he could, his all-out self-healing ability was still no match for the destructive power of the spell. Did it work? It seems like it really worked this time. He is already screaming, "There is hope." Obviously, this attack had ignited the hope of the surviving players once again. However, after 3 seconds, due to the exhaustion of the skill, Yama's life, stamina, and spiritual value had all been depleted to 0, and Yama's body immediately turned into white light and dissipated, while the chaotic energy she released had also vanished in an instant. That's right, Heavy Slash was indeed an unsolvable offensive spell. If Yama could finish releasing it, Infinite might really die here. Unfortunately, hypotheses were just hypotheses, and reality was that it was all for naught. Ha! 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 About 5 seconds later, Infinite's body recovered once again, and he could not help but laugh out loud. I really can't be careless at all. He stretched his body in the air, and the energy in his body once again returned to its peak. Although my own strength is weak, but the borrowed power of the Demon King from another world is not to be underestimated at this point. Infinite raised his arms and opened his palms. Oomph! With a cold snort, a green energy ball appeared above his head. "You puny humans are too presumptuous." Before he could finish his sentence, the size of the energy ball expanded several times. "Do you know what you were doing?" He did not intend to listen to the people below. Half a second later, he continued, "You almost destroyed my perfect life form. This kind of behavior is unforgivable. Run. The farther, the better." At this moment, Shiva shouted. When he shouted, his Ride the Sky ability was already activated, and he took the lead to fly into the distance. The surrounding crowd also dispersed in all directions. Even without Shiva's reminder, they could tell what Infinite was planning to do. Hey, if you do this, even I will get hurt." Even Link, who was hovering in the air, could feel the danger. He muttered to himself as he retreated. "All of you, disappear from me." Finally, Infinite finished his preparation and shouted, "Powerful howling bullet." At that moment, a word flashed through the minds of all the players: death. Even though the opponent's attack had not landed, but based on Infinite's performance just now, his instant cast skill already had the destructive power of a missile. The power and range of this attack would be at the level of a nuclear explosion. In just a few seconds, no one would be able to escape from its range. And within this range, the number of people who could survive its power could be counted with one's fingers. Is it over? Is it over? There's no other way. This guy's strength is not on the same level as ours. The thought of giving up and accepting their fate had already sprouted in the hearts of the people. Many people's footsteps slowed down because of this. Some people simply stopped running and looked back at Infinite, preparing to face their own death. However, at this moment, there was a shocking change. Beep, beep, beep. Warning. High energy reaction detected. Data identification, frowny face, shadow soul chase. Tactical control options. Stop attacking and move horizontally as fast as possible. Survival rate. 65%. What? Even if it was a 35% mortality rate, Infinite did not dare to be careless. He immediately executed the tactical control option and was shocked in his heart. Where did the attack come from? After 0.2 seconds, he thought of the answer. Moving horizontally to dodge. It means that it came from Screech. Before he could make up his mind, a cold light had already arrived and sliced Infinite's face off. And it left a black flame with a destructive effect on his face. If it was not for Infinite's timely evasive action, his entire body would have been split into two from top to bottom. TSK. Troublesome indeed. After the attack, Wang Tanji fell to the ground and looked up at the sky. I've already accelerated to this extent, and he can still evade. This means that the detection range and feedback speed of his tactical control system are ridiculously high. Seems like another guy with a troublesome ability has arrived. At the same time, Infinite, who was in the air, had already torn off his head that was burning with black flame and threw it away, and a new one grew out. If I'm split evenly into two halves by you, and both sides of my body are covered with a large area of black flame, then it'll be troublesome. If I let you successfully throw that strong energy howling bullet, then it'll be really troublesome. Xiaotan looked at him and replied, I don't have the confidence to deal with you and Link alone. Oh. Infinite's expression changed slightly. Do you think that if you're not alone? He looked at the players who had already scattered. Then you have a certain level of confidence. Well, Xiaotan smiled. That smile was as warm as the spring breeze. Who knows? From your tone, you should have a plan. Infinite's analysis was fast and accurate. Could it be that you're planning to stall for time? Xiaotan did not answer this question because at the moment Infinite asked this question, something happened. The explosion tunnel in the sky suddenly disappeared. This scene was undoubtedly not within Link's calculations. His expression immediately changed. What's going on? What's the situation on Ed's side? He quickly calculated all kinds of possibilities in his mind. Could he have been eliminated by loot? Or did the Z organization do something? As he could not get a definite answer for the time being, Link quickly gave up on meaningless guesses and began to think about other questions. In any case, now that the tunnel is closed, Infinite and I are trapped in the data link layer. This means that Infinite can't devour loot according to the plan and can't complete the final evolution. Swoosh. A few seconds later, Link's thoughts were interrupted by the sound of a sharp blade being unsheathed. When he turned his head to look, a figure had already appeared in front of him. Brother, although you're flying high, it's not good to be distracted on the battlefield. Blade Runner laughed arrogantly. He waved the long sword in his hand, and a move of the burning sky of the rising sun was unleashed. In an instant, a red sun sword aura pierced through the sky and slashed towards Link. This is the heavenly art of the Nine Suns. Link also had the ability to heal himself, but in terms of personality, he was the kind of person who would avoid attacks if he could, so he chose to avoid the attack. You finished scanning my data so quickly. Blade Runner knew a thing or two about the anomaly's ability. But knowing doesn't mean that you can handle it, right? As he spoke, Child Jian unleashed two more moves, Double Sun Feign and Triple Sun Blazing Cloud. Link chuckled. Young man, I can see that you have experience fighting against an anomaly. However, I'm afraid all of this experience is meaningless before me. He replied as he easily avoided young Master Sword's move, and he instantly flashed behind young Master Sword, because those fellows you encountered in the past were too weak. Before he finished, Link had already attacked. His method of attack was very simple. He only used the cane in his hand to smash the Sword Master's back, but he was very confident that this simple physical attack would be able to smash his opponent into two. Smack! Unexpectedly, the staff did not land successfully, because a strong and powerful hand had clamped down on Link's wrist before he could attack. That means you're very strong. Smiling at the heavens held Link's wrist and said with a murderous look in his eyes, Then let me cut you a few times to test your elasticity. Chapter 1102. Whoa, this is really... Looking at the palm coming at his face, a smile appeared on Link's face. Boom! The next second, his skull was shattered by question in the heaven's palm, and his head exploded like a watermelon. If this was a battle between players, the battle would have ended by now. But for an anomaly, especially a super anomaly like Link, if he was not obliterated, the battle would not be over. Question in the heavens knew that, so he did not stop attacking. In terms of hand-to-hand combat, he was undoubtedly one of the best players in the game. He could tear apart a Gundam with his bare hands, and tearing apart a normal-sized humanoid was a piece of cake. Instantly, shadows of palms filled the sky, and combat energy surged. Question in the heavens quickly dissected Link's body into hundreds of pieces of meat the size of tennis balls. As the pieces of meat fell to the ground, he spun around and retreated a distance away. Blade Runner cooperated well with him. With one glance, he knew that his guild leader had left some space for him to attack, so he did not hesitate to follow up with 3 attacks. As the saying went, Eternal Blade, Shadow of the Sword, Extreme Skill, Burning Sun. 4 suns burning the wild, 5 suns burning the prairie, and 6 suns burning the night were all used consecutively. In an instant, Link's body was burnt to a crisp, and not even a trace of it was left. Phew! Did it work? Blade Runner gasped for air as he muttered. He had used 6 Sky of 9 Suns in a short amount of time, and had to use a Qin Gong skill to maintain his balance in the air. His stamina was running low, but after this round of attacks, he did not deactivate the skill immediately. Question in the heavens was the same. He did not intend to return to the ground. This was because both he and Child Jian were asking the same question. Will it be that easy? Ha! Are you guys thinking? As expected, several seconds later, Link's voice appeared again. Will it be that easy? Over there. Question in the heavens and Blade Runner had the same reaction. The moment the voice entered their ears, they channeled their chi and rushed toward the source of the voice. However, when they raised their heads and prepared to attack, they could not help but be stunned. They saw 5 figures floating about 7 to 8 meters above their heads. They were 5 identical Links, and the one who was talking to them was the one in the middle. Indeed, it won't be that easy. 2 seconds later, with a smile on his face, Link answered his own question. I'll be frank. You guys can't kill me. He spread out his hands and explained with great interest. Among the big 3 of Origin, in terms of data strength, I should be the weakest, but even Ed couldn't eliminate me. He spoke unhurriedly, and his leisurely attitude made people shudder. Just as my name Link implies, the me you see is only a link in a chain. You have no idea how long this chain is. A doppelganger ability, Question in the heavens muttered after seeing this. So, the one we just destroyed was a fake. These 5 might not be the real deal, Blade Runner added. I wonder how much of the original's power the doppelganger has. Doppelganger? Link laughed. Haha, to think that my power is so shallow. I'm so disappointed. Then, the 5 Links responded and rushed toward Laughing Master and Child Jian at the same speed. These Links used simple punches and kicks, and there was nothing special about them. However, each of them had the strength and speed of a level 1 anomaly from the combat faction. What's going on? Question in the heavens was fighting 1 against 3. As he fought, he was shocked. These 3 have the same physical skills. Are these just doppelgangers? Not far away, Blade Runner was fighting 1 against 2. After 3 to 4 moves, he also noticed this problem. Could this fellow's ability be self-replication? That was what young Master Sword thought of. They were not troubled by this question for too long, because they soon had no energy left to think about other things. Even the best players would not be much stronger than a level 1 anomaly in terms of physical skills. In this situation, they would definitely be at a disadvantage. This won't do. Quickly return to the ground. Before 10 moves had passed, Question in the heavens hurriedly shouted for Child Jian. He knew that if they continued to stay in the air, it would be very disadvantageous for them. As the saying went, strength comes from the ground. Staying in the air not only required extra energy, it was also very inconvenient to borrow strength. If they continued to fight like this, they would die. Okay, Child Jian's aerial combat ability was average, and he was already at his limit. After hearing question in the heavens, he swept out a blade aura and took advantage of the moment when the enemy was pushed back to the ground. Oomph. At least he's smart. Link, or rather, the Lynx, did not intend to pursue the two from Jianghu. This was because he had a better idea at this moment. 2 seconds later, he turned to Infinite, who was facing off against Xiao Tan, and said, "Infinite, let's exchange." His words came out of nowhere, and the key word was exchange, but Infinite understood immediately. "I have the same idea," Infinite replied with a smile. After the two finished talking, they immediately took action. The 5 Lynx changed their direction in midair and flew toward Xiao Tan. Infinite, on the other hand, rose into the air again and looked down at the ground. "Watch out, it's coming again." In less than half a second, autumn wind howled from the crowd, reminding the people around to prepare for a new round of bombardment. No matter what, Pikachu was still a strategist. He immediately understood that Link's exchange meant that he would deal with Wang Tanji, who had the Black Flame ability, and Infinite would continue to slaughter the other players. This was undoubtedly a more efficient and reasonable distribution. To most of the players, Infinite's instantaneous finger snap bomb was simply a nightmare. Using the moves of fighting games as an example, this move belonged to the category of long-range, wide-range killing moves. When the action was made, the damage assessment would begin. The party being attacked would have almost no time to react. Of course, in theory, there was still a difference of a few milliseconds between the process of Finite preparing to snap his fingers and the process of snapping his fingers. During this process, the players could observe the subtle movements of his fingers to determine whether he was about to snap his fingers. Then, they would be able to react accordingly. But even if someone could do this extreme operation, they still had to guess where Infinite was going to detonate his finger in order to make an effective response. Simply put, the difficulty of realizing this assumption was so high that it made one's hair stand on end. Boom! A second later, there was another explosion. Autumn Wind's reminder was timely, but could not change the grim situation. Following the sound of the explosion, more than 10 players were sacrificed. If not for the fact that the crowd was scattered, this shot would have caused more than 100 casualties. Brother Chiu Feng. Before the dust settled, Weighty Words, who had one of his legs blown off, crawled to Chiu Feng's side. He smiled bitterly and said, "Don't waste your energy." He shook his head. "In this situation, there's nothing I can do." Cough. Puff. Autumn Wind, who was lying on the ground, spat out a mouthful of blood. He then smiled bitterly and replied, "Yes, knowing when to give up is also one of the basic qualities of strategist." At this time, Weighty Word's expression changed slightly. "It's a bit embarrassing to say. At this time, I suddenly miss a certain guy who doesn't play by the rules, who never gives up, and who can still spout nonsense in a situation of absolute death." "Yes." Autumn Wind breathed his last and said sadly, "Although I don't really like that madman who taunts the moment he opens his mouth. But at this time, I sincerely hope that guy can come out and punish that self-proclaimed perfect life form in the sky." Autumn Wind did not manage to finish his words before he died due to his heavy injuries. In the blink of an eye, he turned into white light. At that last moment, he felt regretful. The large number of surviving players that he and Weighty Words had led to successfully resist the redundant troops were almost all dead in the last 10 minutes. The efforts of the two strategists in front of Infinite turned into nothing with just a few snaps of his fingers. Sigh, Brother Autumn Wind. Looking at the gradually dissipating white light, Weighty Words shook his head helplessly. "You go first. I think I'll be here soon." Chapter 1103. Weighty Words sat weakly on the ground and raised his eyes to look. At that moment, on the battlefield, there were less than 500 players left, and they were scattered all over the place. Of them, more than 90% of them were injured in the battle in the game space, and 100% of them had used up half of their stamina. At this moment, In front of Infinite's almost invincible defense and unreasonable attack power, the players had basically lost their will to fight. Even Weighty Words himself was the same. But there were still people who persisted. When Link rushed toward Shao Tan, Shiva, Hatobi-sama, not a scaredy cat, and Botinga rushed forward to block this round of attacks for him. Other than that, Blade Runner, Ask the Heavens, Su Huaishang, and Bloody Rose did not give up. They were trying to get close to Infinite, looking for a chance to kill this monster. It will be hard to deal with them if they're scattered. After firing a few more finger bombs, Infinite looked around. After thinking for a second, he made the next decision. I'll use that. With that thought in mind, Infinite dropped down like a meteor. In an instant, he was standing on the ground with both of his arms raised to his sides. At that moment, what he planned to do was to release a continuous energy beam from both of his palms that could extend to at least 10 kilometers away, and then he would level his arms and spin 180 degrees on the spot. After all, this white space was not Earth. The ground here had no curvature or height difference. Once Infinite successfully used this skill, then all the standing players above 6 meters within a radius of 10 kilometers would be sliced in half. Thankfully, at that moment, someone saw through his intention and came up with a countermeasure. Falling Flower. Flying Catkins. In a breath's time, Su Huaishang's figure arrived, and both of her swords slashed out. Flowers bloomed and withered, and the wind blew catkins away. The beautiful swords were like wild cherry blossoms, slicing Infinite's upper body into thousands of pieces. However, just as Su Huaishang pulled back her attack, Infinite had already recovered, and he let out a strange, eerie laugh. What's going on? So fast. That's impossible. The 3 people who followed Su Huaishang were also shocked because Infinite's self-healing ability had obviously increased, and it had increased by a lot. Hee hee. Ha 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 ha. A few seconds later, Infinite's strange laughter turned into a maniacal laughter. Foolish humans. Haven't you noticed? Before he could finish his sentence, he twisted his body and threw out a punch. The wind from his fist burst forth and struck towards Ask the Heavens, who was a few meters away. The speed of this punch was clearly beyond smiling at the Heavens' expectations. It was too late for him to dodge. He could only rely on his battle instincts to raise his hands and cross them in front of him to protect himself. Then, the upper half of his body disappeared. Although the part below his abdomen still maintained the posture of his knees slightly bent and his waist and horse as one, his body had already been blasted into nothing by the tyrannical shockwave. Seeing this, flashes of sword roared. With his anger, his murderous intent reached its limit. UB** starred. Child Jian was a hot-blooded man. Once he was angry, it was normal for him to curse. I'll send you on your way. While he was cursing, he had already overdrawn his physical and spiritual energy and forcefully used the final move of the 9-sun sky art. 9 suns burning the universe. But because finite was faster than him, it's useless. In a flash, Infinite did not care about Child Jian's attack and waved his arm to meet it. When the two forces collided, a flame explosion erupted and engulfed both Child Jian and Infinite. Su Huaishang and Bloody Rose were standing nearby, had already sensed that something was wrong, and quickly retreated from the area. About 5 seconds later, in the heat wave, the flame of the flame explosion dissipated. 2 charred figures stood in the same posture as before the flame explosion. One of them quickly turned into white light and dissipated, while the other recovered at a speed visible to the naked eye. I think I understand. At this time, Bloody Rose's face showed an unconcealable fear. She muttered, "He's evolving, you finally noticed?" Infinite continued the conversation and laughed madly again. Ha! The laughter was so maniacal that it was hard to imagine that it came from an anomaly. Every time I suffer a high-intensity attack, my defense and self-healing power will increase because my genetic code wants to adapt to that kind of damage. Every time I fight with an opponent faster than me, my speed will increase because my genetic code wants to adapt to the opponent's speed. And every time my attack fails to break through some kind of defense, my power will increase, because my genetic code wants to adapt to the strength of that kind of defense. He opened his arms and continued with a wicked smile. From single-celled to multi-celled, from invertebrates to reptiles, and then to mammals. Tracing back to the source, you humans are just a group of monkeys who are slightly ahead on the path of evolution. And I am completely different from you. For you, the mutation or evolution that takes tens of thousands or even millions of years only takes an instant for me. He purposely spread his voice far so that every player in this space could hear him. Because I am a perfect creature. He used a proclamation to say, I represent infinity. No one can stop me anymore. Tonight, I will break through this dimension, break through this bottleneck that has been holding me back for so long. He clenched his fists and continued arrogantly. After I cut off all of your neural connection and destroy all of your consciousness, my consciousness will take over all of your bodies. You will have the honor of becoming the first batch of carriers for my activities in a higher dimension. Hey, what is this guy talking about? Why can't I understand him? Don't worry, it's just a plot setting in the game. Don't tell me the Dream Company will let an out-of-control program brainwash the players, but we really can't force ourselves to go offline now. We can't contact the dead people either. At midnight, I can't feel my own body in the real world anymore. Now that I think about it, everything that happened today is very strange. Finite's declaration made the players uneasy. Although most of them still didn't fully believe or understand his words, the atmosphere of suspicion and fear had indeed spread. Don't worry, I will make good use of your bodies. But Infinite was not done yet. Each of you will be unwavering combat power, labor, and experimental material. When necessary, you can even be used as a reproduction machine. The content of his speech became scarier and scarier. The development of the brain's potential, the remodeling of genetic code, and the research on the assimilation of the human body with electronic devices. I will make the most efficient progress in the technology that has been stagnant in human society due to narrow and empty moral values. Just like how I have conquered all the evolutionary challenges in this dimension, I will conquer the dimension that you are in and become the strongest creature that even the universe itself cannot destroy. Then, I will march to the next dimension. Listening to Infinite's description, even Link's eyes flashed with a strange light. He could not help but think to himself, wait a minute, isn't our plan to have our anomalies take over the human bodies together? How come it has become his consciousness alone taking over? So, foolish humans, wake up. Infinite did not know what Link was thinking. He continued, you are obstructing a great cause that is indescribable with words, trying to stop the inevitable fate. His voice became hysterical. Too ignorant. Too hateful. It's driving me crazy. His sobbing turned into a roar. Hurry up and die. Die. Before he finished his roar, his ultimate move had already been unleashed. At that moment, his eyes once again shot out a green light, penetrating and obliterating everything in the line in front of him. Following that, he did a 360-degree turn on the spot, sweeping through all the players within a radius of 1,000 meters. Chapter 1104. This circular sweep wasn't a very fast attack, and many players were able to react in time. But there are still more than 100 players who were taken away by this wave. In this way, the number of surviving players dropped to less than 200. Looking at the white light that floated into the air, at a place far away from Infinite, a middle-aged man spoke. Li Feng looked at the 4 players who stood before him and said, guys, hearing that, the 4 main members of Blades turned around to look at Uncle Li. Even though my gaming skills are not that good, I can see that you guys are very strong, Li Feng said. I am grateful that you guys have protected me throughout the whole process, and I know that you guys have a good reason for doing so. But I think, at this moment, compared to protecting a newbie like me, protecting everyone is more meaningful, isn't it? Hearing that, Tam Lang, 7 kills, and Long Almin all turned to look at defeating armies. Their meaning was clear. We wish to help, but leader, you have to take the lead and say something. That way, when the leader blames us in the future, we will have an explanation. Defeating armies thought about it for a few seconds and said, actually, there are only two instructions from above. He paused. The first instruction, when there is danger, let the leader go first. At this point, his expression changed, and he turned to Tan Lang with a meaningful look. The second instruction, when there is a serious situation, act according to the leader's orders. So, Tan Lang, the political commissar, got the message and said, now, it is time for us to change our strategy according to Uncle Lee, or rather, according to the leader's instruction. Long Almin laughed happily. I was waiting for that. 7 Kills also laughed. He immediately raised his hand and cracked his knuckles. Great. I've been wanting to beat that B** startup for a long time. Hey. Tan Lang heard that and frowned. He reminded, what are you doing? Is it worth it to act like a bandit? Defeating armies also took on the air of a leader and said seriously, political commissar, you are right. He also turned to 7 Kills. We are a disciplined unit. No matter what happens, we have to control our emotions and pay attention to your words. Yes, I will be more careful next time. 7 Kills replied loudly. 1 second later, he asked, then can I go up and kill him now? Yes. Defeating armies and Tan Lang nodded and said in unison, of course. Before he could finish his sentence, 7 Kills had already shot out like a bullet. At the same second, a set of data flashed before Infinite's eyes. DDDD. Warning. Detected high-energy reaction data identification. Shadow step. Star melting moon fist. Tactical control option creating a foam-like, heat-resistant defensive armor on the surface of the body. Survival rate. 84%. Oh. There's actually such a powerhouse hidden in the crowd. Infinite thought as he executed the tactical control option. Boom. In the next second, he punched out and exploded. When 7 Kills used this rank S skill, not only did he use Dark Shadow Steps as a prerequisite, he also activated his Soul's Eye, Fierce Star Flame. This punch could be said to be the second strongest fire attribute skill that had appeared in Thriller Paradise so far. Everyone, there is no need to recall. The strongest fire attribute skill that had appeared so far was Unparalleled Heat Wave Cannon. In the brother scenario, it was triggered by Take This. However, Infinite still easily neutralized this attack. So that's how it is. After the blow, Infinite slowly turned around. The layers of fluorinated foam-like substance on his body were also burning and fading away. Although it's only a 16% probability, but if I didn't defend against this blow in time, I really might have been melted by this punch. Before he finished, he suddenly laughed and threw out a punch. Ha! What a shame. It is still useless. Boo! In an instant, the wind from the punch rose again. 7 Kills, who had yet to finish his move, was very close to Infinite. His situation was even worse than laughing at the heavens just now. When the earth-shattering power brushed past him, his entire person disappeared. Everyone who saw this knew that 7 Kill was not sent flying. He was smashed into pieces by the wind from the punch and blown away. However, the process was so fast that it looked like he had disappeared in an instant. How dare you? Before 7 Kill's body turned cold, a roar followed. Then, who else could it be other than Long Almin? At this time, Brother Dragon had already activated his Dragon Knight status. His body that was as strong as Schwarzenegger's had grown by another 30%. His muscles were covered in amber dragon scales, and his eyes had turned into a pair of red gemstones. Since he was not as fast as 7 Kill, Long Almin arrived slightly later than his teammates. However, it was at this moment that 7 Kill was killed. This made Brother Long furious. Therefore, he unleashed his strongest attack as soon as he arrived. Dragon God Swing. Swing your head. Who would have thought that Infinite would not allow Brother Long to use his skill? With a roar, he used a speed that was far beyond Long Almin's dynamic vision to deliver a side kick to the latter's head. Whoosh! The sound of Brother Long's head shattering sounded like a piece of cartilage being tossed into a pot of boiling oil. The shield in his hand was useless. His dragon-scale defense was nothing before Infinite's destructive power. His death caused the hearts of the other survivors to sink to the bottom of the valley. I've already said that it's useless. Finette had used his actions to prove that his strength had already evolved to a level that would cause others to feel utter despair in this battle. His attitude had also become increasingly unscrupulous. Resisting will only increase the pain in the midst of fear and despair. As for escaping, unfortunately, in the data link layer, no matter how far away you are, you will still be sensed by link. As he spoke, he suddenly used his right hand as a claw and made 5 ghastly bloody scratches on his chest. So, it is best that you accept your death obediently. When he finished, the wounds on his chest had already healed. Even though I do not wish to admit it. Atobi, who was suppressed by one of the 5 links, laughed bitterly. But what he said sounds like the truth. Don't give up. There's still hope. Shiva, who was fighting 1 against 2, heard his nagging and quickly yelled at him, trying to cheer him up. 2 seconds later, Not a Scaredy Cat asked in a dejected tone, "Really, there is still hope?" In those few short minutes, Laughing questioned the heavens, and Blade Runner had been killed by Infinite. Not a Scaredy Cat's brother, Butienga, had also been sacrificed in the battle with Link. Not a Scaredy Cat had also been injured due to several distractions and could not hold on any longer. In other words, be it on Infinite's side or Link's side, the players were at an absolute disadvantage in this battle. There was not even a chance of victory. There is, however, Wang Tanji used a loud and firm voice to give Not a Scaredy Cat an affirmative answer. He then rushed forward to deal with the Link who was fighting with Not a Scaredy Cat. Wang Tanji. One of the remaining 3 Links turned back to tell Xiao Tan. Using Flame Bite to deal with the 2 of me is indeed praiseworthy. But you don't think that after dealing with all 5 of us, everything will be over, right? Just as he was speaking, a bunch of people in suits and leather shoes descended from the sky. Shiva and the rest glanced at them from the corner of their eyes, and they were shocked because there were 20 links that looked exactly the same. Look, one of the new links picked up where the first link left off and said, "The loss of 1 or 2 of me is nothing. With your limited stamina, how many times can you kill me?" "I don't know about that," Xiao Tan said. "My mission is to hold on until reinforcements arrive." Reinforcements? The Link's expression shifted, and he raised his head to look at the sky. "This is interesting. Based on my detection program, you came here through the hole created by Bugs Bunny, and you're the only one who came out from the hole." He lowered his head to look at Xiao Tan. "Now, the game space is empty, and the tunnel that connected to the inner world has disappeared. I'm sorry, but where will your reinforcements come from? As long as I'm still alive, the War Demon will send them to me," Xiao Tan answered honestly. "War Demon?" Surprise crossed Link's face before he chuckled coldly. Even though I think you're bluffing, just to be safe, I'll try my best to kill you first." Then, other than the 3 Links who were fighting Shiva and Atobi, all the other Links charged at Xiao Tan. Like a pack of wolves, they surrounded him. No matter how fast Xiao Tan was, being surrounded by more than 10 level 1 anomalies, there was no way he could escape. TSK. Death's Door. Just as Xiao Tan was about to take out his trump card, a buzzing sound rang out. Hum, 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 hum. 5 figures were transported by a wave of demonic energy and appeared around Xiao Tan. Hey, what is going on?" The Shadow King's reaction was surprisingly calm. "Damn it, we've been tricked by that phone fella again." Hong, who was annoyed. "In any case, how about we take control of the situation first?" Tire Dream gave a very constructive suggestion. "Okay, I'll do it." Uncle Worthless pushed his sunglasses up and replied calmly. In the end, the 5th illusionary of the Loser Alliance, Mr. Wong, used a dialect to describe the emotions of the 5 members. What is going on? You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.